Yeah, okay. Welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for July 17th, 2023. City Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Newhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale? Here. Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes? Councilmember Robertson? Here. And Councilmember Zahn?
Here. Councilmember Lee, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, we have a proclamation tonight on pre-trial probation and parole supervision week. And we've asked Councilmember Barksdale to please read that.
Whereas probation services are an essential part of the justice system, ensuring the supervision of individuals charged with a misdemeanor in Bellevue, and providing an alternative to incarceration that allows clients to maintain constructive ties to their families and communities. And whereas probation services are an effective tool in reducing recidivism rates by identifying client needs and risk factors and positively influencing thoughts and behaviors through positive role modeling, collaborative problem solving, and targeted programs. And whereas probation services professionals are trained specialists who believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every individual and provide programming, services, and resource referrals for clients to promote personal change and accountability. And whereas probation services professionals form meaningful partnerships with community agencies to help meet the underlying needs of clients, which can help them avoid involvement with the criminal justice system. And whereas probation services professionals advocate for community and restorative justice. And whereas probation services professionals integrate trauma-informed practices into client interactions and services, improving outcomes by prioritizing a relational approach to supporting clients. And whereas probation services professionals apply an equity lens to their work in meeting the needs of community members, including the use of sliding scale fees, translation, and interpretation services to ensure access, as well as data tracking to monitor equity and client outcomes and evaluate how specific subgroups are performing. And whereas probation services professionals are a source of positive change in their communities. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim July 16th through the 23rd, 2023 as Pre-Trial Probation and Parole Supervision Week in Bellevue, Washington, and encourage all residents to honor these probation professionals and recognize the vital services they provide to our community.
Thank you. We have Brad Nonaka here to accept. Would you like to speak? Then we'll do a picture after.
Thank you. Hopefully this is a good distance. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newhouse, and the City Council for the recognition of all the great work of the city's probation staff. Founded in 1978, the Bellevue Probation Division works together with the courts, law enforcement agencies, community organizations, community leaders, and victim advocates with the goal of facilitating rehabilitation and enhancing community safety. Our probation staff has more than 150 combined years of experience in our field, and we offer state-of-the-art electronic home detention and pretrial alcohol monitoring services, evidence-based programming and interventions, and provide supervision for adult misdemeanor referrals from King County District Court. We use a risk needs responsivity model of supervision to make timely and needs-driven referrals, and we are unique. We share a building with the District Court. This allows us to offer clients direct and easy access to the resources that allow clients to meet court-ordered conditions, and also services that facilitate rehabilitation, including on-site programming and electronic monitoring services. Our staff strives to treat all those we have the opportunity to serve with respect, fairness, and dignity in a culturally competent, inclusive, and accessible environment. We remain current with the ever-changing best practices of probation by remaining up to date on topics such as trauma-informed care, suicide prevention, opioid overdose response, motivational interviewing, medication-assisted therapy, harm reduction strategies, and mental health first aid. We also conduct language assessments, making available interpreter services and translate documents for language accessibility, as well as offer alternative payments and sliding scale fees to ensure our services are financially available to all. Bellevue probation is effective in reducing recidivism, helping clients maintain stability, employment, and education while being held accountable for their actions, lowering jail costs, and providing tools towards the goal of rehabilitation while under supervision. And it is our pleasure to continue to serve the City of Bellevue and its residents in the pursuit of community safety and enhancing the lives of those we supervise. Thank you again for your support you provide to our probation team, which enhance community safety.
Brad, we're all proud of the work you all do. Do you have other people with you representing your department?
I do. I have 2 additional probation officers from my division,
Great.
Ms. Dejane Anderson and Connie Ng.
Great, well, why don't you come up here as well, and we'll all do a picture. Have oral communications, City Clerk, do you have, has anybody signed up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. So now, City Clerk.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This evening, we do have over 30 speakers registered to speak this evening. That does push us beyond the 30-minute maximum time limit, so I just wanted to remind folks of a few of the rules that the council has set in place. If the number of speakers exceeds the 30-minute time limit, the mayor is authorized to give preference to those speaking to items on tonight's agenda or who has not spoken to council in the last quarter or who is speaking on a topic that could come in front of the council within the next 30 days, within the next quarter. Again, each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. There can only be a total of 3 speakers speaking to any one side of a particular topic. And then finally, I need to remind everyone that in compliance with Washington State public disclosure laws regarding the use of public facilities during an election, no election-related topics can be discussed during oral communications or other public participation points on tonight's agenda. That includes promoting or opposing ballot measures or supporting or opposing a candidate for an election, which includes your own campaign. Any speaker who begins discussing topics of this nature will be asked to stop. And given the number of speakers, I am going to turn it back to the mayor to talk a little bit about the prioritization for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to, as our clerk said, start with the agenda items on the people signed up with. Some people have signed up with specific items, and we can only take 3 pro and 3 against of each item. And so we will start with those, and then a lot of people have signed up to talk about the comprehensive plan. And I don't want to just say only 3 comp plan for 3 against, because I know you're probably speaking to something specific. So when you come up, when we call your name, if you can tell me specifically what you're speaking to, for or against, then we can get more people in to speak in our 30 minutes. So with that, let's start with the Loch Levin people, and then we will go to the people who are signed up to talk about future zoning. We have ADU, and we have curb management. I'm trying to see if there's a specific one. I think we'll get you if I haven't called you right now, but go ahead, City Clerk.
Perfect. So
you can
our
start.
first speaker is Neo Lee, who I believe is joining us in person.
name is Neil, and I'm here to represent the concerned resident from 94th to 100 Avenue of Loch Levin. In the limited time I have, I will be direct and straightforward. We strongly oppose the alternatives 3, 2, and 1 for the environmental impact statement regarding to the northwest quadrant. We reject any zoning to be lower changed to lower to median or high throughout the Loch Levin, and here are the reasons. A vast majority of the neighbors, approximately 95%, are unaware of the EIS alternative plans, and the remaining 5% who are aware of that have very perceptions of the impact. The lack of awareness and public engagement render this plan questionable. Secondly, increasing the height of the building up to 6 stories will irreversibly alter the character of our neighborhood, which we are opposed. And furthermore, those proposals contradict to the Northwest Bellevue comprehensive plan revised just 2 years ago. They also diminish the mandate buffer and separation between downtown Bellevue and Loch Levin, neglecting the privacy of nearby properties. The proposal failed to consider the loss of the light shadow footprint on nearby property, as well as the impact on the tree canopy, the disregard of the effect on the traffic, pedestrian safety, parking, curb management, and city utility, including police and also fire services. The lack of consideration for the education infrastructure will also negatively impact the quality of the education, the learning environment for our future children. And here is what we're asking for: bridging the gap between the planning department and our community. We urge you to begin with the need and perspective of your constituents. After all, we are the people who live in here and have contributed to the growth of Bellevue in more than 10 years. Lastly, the council must mandate a data-driven analysis and establish a realistic schedule, allow the stakeholder to have sufficient time to thoroughly study those proposals. Thank you for your attention, and let us work together to create a better Bellevue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Shanwen Gao. And Mr. Gao, I do not see you connected by name virtually. Are you here with us in person? No. Okay. If you are connected virtually, can you please raise your hand so I can identify you? Not seeing a hand. I will circle back. The next speaker is Wei Duan. Same thing for this speaker. If you are connected virtually, can you please raise your hand? Okay, one additional speaker, Cheng Cheng. Again, if you are connected virtually, can you please use the raise hand function? Okay, going back.
So I'm going to say that since we have more than 3 people suffering the same situation, that maybe we call in tech and see if they can call these people on the phone or something, or help us patch them in.
But thank you, Mayor. We will definitely connect with those folks. We do have a number of folks online, though. I will move to the next person. We're going to go with Gardner Morelli, who is also virtual. Mr. Morelli, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. Your time begins now.
Yes. So first thing, thank you very much. I just want to let you know that I said that I was pro. I'm pro. And this is directed to you, Mayor, because maybe you want me later. I am pro the vision for Wilburton, but I have comments that are opposed to what the Planning Council approved. So could you give me some direction on?
Is there anything in specific that you want to speak about the Planning Commission's recommendation?
It's regarding the alternative three, the proposed alternative three versus what was approved last week by the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's a good, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Gardner Morelli, and I'm here to quickly talk about the vision for Wilburton. We have been a property owner in Wilburton since 2005 on a 5-acre parcel at 11911 and 11811 Northeast First Avenue. They are currently 2 3-story office buildings. We believe that with the right zoning, that this property will be a great transit-oriented development site in the future. And I am here to just discuss and ask the council to really consider looking at the alternative 3 proposal versus what was approved by the Planning Commission. When the proposed zoning was studied as alternative 3 in the draft EIS, it really hit the mark. It met objectives of many of the different parties, as well as the goals of the council when they told staff to think big last year. We have been part of the Community Advisory Committee from the beginning, and we have heard the city multiple times saying that there's a crisis when it comes to housing. There's a regional crisis when it comes to traffic mitigation, and that Wilburton is the last large piece of property within within Bellevue that the city can really work closely with the private property owners as well as with staff and regional experts to really find the right solution for our traffic and housing needs. And that is why we were surprised when staff recommended a newly kind of a revised proposal as the alternative to be considered last week that really reduced the overall development of Wilburton. And it not only reduced the heights, it reduced the uses. And I'm asking the city and the council to seriously consider reversing that and looking at alternative 3. And the reason why we feel that is that Wilburton provides support-oriented development that is near transit that the city and the county has already invested in. That high-rise designations on what was in the alternative 3 will provide graceful transitions from the denser
Mr.
downtown.
Morelli? Mr.
Yes?
Morelli, I apologize. Your time has expired.
Okay, well, it was asked to be given direction on the topic, so.
So if you could follow up with an email, we can all read the rest of your statement.
Okay, I thank you very much for your time. I sent it earlier today.
Good, perfect, thank you.
I didn't see the clock.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Christina Degoni.
Hello, I am Christina Degoni, and I wanted to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. Specifically, I'm here to speak about a property up in the northeast corner of Bellevue known as Overlake Farm. We are the single largest landholding left in Bellevue. It is 60 acres. Tonight, I am here to only discuss the back 40, which consists of 3 parcels. Immediately north of us is 6001 mid-rise apartment condos, and immediately east of us is not Overlake, but Bellevue Municipal Golf Course, which interestingly was the other half of our farm until the 140th Street went in the 60s. We are very grateful that you picked us up as our low on our northeast parcel, but we are making a request that you reconsider moving us to our medium, which will allow us to put more housing in a clustered concept on our farm. We don't want to develop our entire farm, and hence we are only talking about our back 40, not our front 20. And we're only really looking to develop along 140th and again next to 6001 and across from the golf course. We also ask that you consider our southern 2 parcels and add those in as our low. Currently, I'm assuming maybe they're RLL. It's R1 zoning there. So our northerly parcel is 9269, and that what we request to have redesignated to our medium. And then our southerly two parcels along 140th and immediately across from the golf course is 9247 and 9270. We believe this would have very little impact on the neighborhood due to 6001 to the north, Bellevue Municipal to the east, and a step down to our south, and we own all the parcels to our west. So we believe that this would have very little impact. Obviously, RM provides significant more density and allows us to cluster density up in that northeast corner and then do townhomes or cottages moving south along 140th. I think that's all I have to say, and I really appreciate your consideration in this matter. Thank you. And I did submit a written letter earlier today to many of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see Wade Dewan connected virtually now. Ms. Dewan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
All right. Okay. Dear city member, council, and the planning commission, my name is Wei Duan. I live in 134 97th Avenue, northeast of Bellevue. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the recent preferred alternatives to the Lac-Owen community. Over the past several months, the planning department has advanced many initiatives. We appreciate their work and the professionalism, yet the volume of their proposals has been overwhelming. And most of our neighbors, especially the senior neighbors, they didn't get informed, and their voice couldn't be heard. And the capacity to digest and understanding the impact of the EIS is significantly challenging to us. I would like to summarize the preferred alternatives to this community. The impact we would like to, we would want the city members not approved for the following reasons. First one is the proposal directly conflict with the comp plan for Northwest Bellevue, which was revised less than 2 years ago. And second of all, this proposal would diminish the mandated buffer and the separations between downtown Bellevue and the Lac-Owen community. Third, this proposal does not consider the loss of privacy to nearby properties. Fourth, this proposal does not consider the loss of the lights and the shadow footprints on nearby properties and the impact to the tree canopy. Fifth, it does not consider the impact to traffic, pedestrian safety, parking, and curb management. Six, it does not consider the impact to city utilities and infrastructures, including police and fire. And the seventh, it lacks an economic impact assessment to homeowner private value. Our ask.
Ms. Dewan, I apologize, your time has expired. I would encourage you to email your comments at council@bellevuewa.gov.
Okay, I already did that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Nicole Myers, who I believe is in person.
I am a Loch Leven resident, though I was actually signed up to speak about the ADU. I am disappointed that the city is proposing to authorize 60/40 duplexes across the city, and I feel that calling these ADUs is deceptive and takes advantage of people's desire to create affordable housing. There is currently a duplex next to Bellevue Way that's under 2,800 square feet and listed for $3.2 million. How much more would it cost if it was on a nice, quiet neighborhood street? Authorizing ADUs that can be up to 40% of the total square footage is not required by HB 1337. We only need to allow them up to 1,000 square feet. This ordinance will allow a 3,000 square foot ADU as long as it is attached to a 4,500 square foot primary residence. Also, if we call these duplexes ADUs, all that additional square footage is not counted when determining what is allowed. HB 1337 requires us to allow an accessory dwelling unit on any lot that meets the minimum lot size required for the principal unit. Among the duplex-related rules that would be evaded by a 60/40 ADU duplex is parking. In particular, transit maps are about to change. Please use the maps from the East Link Connections project when determining which areas will be within half a mile of a major transit stop, and therefore which 60/40 ADU duplexes would not be required to add any parking for their multi-million-dollar ADU. If we cap the sales price of ADUs to be affordable to people at 200% AMI, it would reduce speculation and result in more reasonably sized ADUs. If we cap the size to 1,000 square feet, in line with state law, more will naturally be affordable while still being large enough for a family. If we have no controls on sales price or square footage, we will make some people rich while they get around rules that would apply to duplexes otherwise. It's not fair to let someone build a 60/40 ADU duplex with 7 bathrooms, which might be 10 bathrooms by the time we make allowances for the second ADU required by HB 1337, without having them contribute to the utilities upgrades our neighborhoods will need. Let's keep it simple so we can move forward. Please use the caps
Excuse
found in the
me,
HB
I'm sorry. Mr. Zimmerman, you need to stop. I can't hear her when you're doing that, okay? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Let's just keep it simple so we can move forward. Please use the caps found in the state legislation. Please use bus maps representing routes that will be part of our light rail network. And please look at the comments from the public hearing, which I do not feel have adequately been addressed and were quite valid. I would also like to mention that I would have loved to comment on the curb management plan and the comprehensive plan, but with such a stuffed agenda, I really had to pick and choose what I was able to speak to you about. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Maria Frost.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Nice to be here in person for the first time. For the record, my name is Maria Frost. I'm the Director of Transportation at Kemper Development Company. Thank you so much for your continued work on the curb management plan. An effective CMP is one that is responsive to travel and curb demand, with a process for requested changes that's rooted in curb activity data, traffic analysis, and public accountability. We neither support nor oppose the CMP and want to express support today for a key element of the CMP. Over the last year, Kemper Development Company has consistently provided feedback on the curb management plan to city staff, at the Bellevue Chamber, and Bellevue Downtown Association, and at Transportation and Planning Commissions. We have largely advocated for traffic studies to be required for curb changes that would impact capacity of a travel lane or intersection, with a request that the city consider a no-action alternative to the proposed change should the analysis result in an increase in vehicular delay, travel times, or queuing. Staff have done a great job in responding to concerns and suggesting minor language changes throughout the CMP that are nuanced but really important. Most importantly, in response to public concerns, staff added language that states, whenever a significant portion of a movement-based curbside travel lane is proposed to be permanently converted into a different use, the city will conduct a traffic analysis and allow the public an opportunity to provide feedback. We support the inclusion of this critical language, which requires the city to thoughtfully consider and analyze impacts to Bellevue's limited downtown transportation network and consider public feedback before making a significant curb change. Ultimately, curb decisions in Bellevue that would make driving more difficult and parking more expensive might reduce driving or VMT in line with city and PSRC goals, but at the potential cost of making Bellevue a more exclusive and unwelcoming place for lower and middle income people who drive. Supporting vehicular mobility is central to supporting equitable employment and recreational access to Bellevue. Please keep this in mind as you consider curb management proposals and recommendations. Thank you so much again for your work and your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jody Alberts.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Noonhouse, and council members. I'm speaking tonight in support of the curb management plan on behalf of the Bellevue Chamber. So over the last year, city staff have worked very closely with our organization and our member affiliates to collaborate on how best to address curb use policies in Bellevue. The Chamber really appreciates the effort that staff dedicated to ensuring an in-depth stakeholder process for the last year, and that our suggestions were incorporated and our concerns at the very least were responded to. Given that these policies have the ability to affect the vibrancy of our city and local economy, as well as on movement in and around the city, it's truly imperative that we understand the impacts from such policies, one in particular being converting curb use. We are very supportive of city staff's decision to incorporate a traffic analysis and conduct a public engagement process in order to better understand these impacts prior to implementation. Thoughtful policy implementation measures such as this make for a better informed curb system that will be less likely to adversely affect our businesses, commuters, and visitors to our city. We hope that the council will include this tool for analysis in the CMP and consider, as staff has done, the primary ways in which the workers and residents of Bellevue travel. So thank you again for your support. I do want to thank staff once again, Andrew Singalakis, Chris Iverson. They really did a phenomenal job of just ensuring that they incorporated as much feedback as possible from the community. So thank you to them. Thanks.
And the next speaker is Vic Bishop, who I believe is joining us virtually. Mr. Bishop, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson and council members. My name is Victor Bishop, residing at 2114 West Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast in Bellevue. I'm a retired traffic engineer and have been involved with traffic issues in Bellevue for over 50 years as a professional consultant to the city, a member of the Transportation Commission for 2 terms and as chair for 1 year, as a board member of ETA for over 25 years, a past president of ETA and the current legislative chair of ETA, and I'm speaking here tonight representing ETA. ETA presented comments on the curb management plan to the Transportation Commission in a letter dated May 9th, 2023. We believe the Commission recommendation includes language responding to our request that a traffic analysis be conducted if an existing curb lane is proposed to be removed in favor of some other curb lane use on a street within the curb management area. I understand that the recommended plan includes appropriate language along these lines, and so ETA is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the traffic carrying capacity of our arterial street system will be retained where necessary with public input with this language. I encourage you to move forward with the proposal, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Matt Jack.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, council members. I'm commenting on behalf of the Bellevue Downtown Association to share our support for the city's initiative to adopt a curb management plan that will successfully optimize the movement of people and goods in a manner that promotes economic activity, vibrant public spaces, safe walkable streets, and multimodal access. The BDA has been engaged in the development of the CMP since the very start, and I'm pleased to report that the city has been incredibly responsive to the public's feedback along the way. The BDA Board of Directors endorsed the BDA Transportation Committee's work in April, which was subsequently shared with the Bellevue Transportation Commission in May. This body of work is accessible online. We have, basically, if I take a step back, I want to note that we understand that a successful CMP relies on being a dynamic tool that accurately accounts for existing conditions and swiftly responds to changes. Because of this nature, we know that our work needs to be adaptive too. So earlier today, you received an email with a bunch of links to different tools that were endorsed by the BDA Board of Directors. We consider this a layer of lenses that allows us to view the implementation of the CMP. These lenses include desired outcomes, principles, and endorsed tools, including also analysis of the draft CMP itself. As you know, we don't have a curb management plan, and so downtown Bellevue would greatly benefit from a CMP that successfully addresses our curb issues in an adaptive manner that responds to emerging uses. We applaud the city for initiating this work and for advancing it to this milestone. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. So that's 3 in favor
Yes,
of
in
the curb
support.
management plan, and 1 who had an addition to make with it. So
Moving on to our next speaker is Lisa Safara, who is joining us in person.
So I guess if you're going to speak about the curb management plan, if you're in favor of it as is, we already have 3, but if you're going to speak against it or make a recommended change, we have room.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Safara. I'm Christina Degoni's cousin, and both of our moms are here, longtime Bellevue people, and thank you for hearing us in this format. I just want to say our family is all on the same page of supporting growth in Bellevue, and specifically, my sister and I own the 9-acre parcel that is part of the greater 40 acres, and it appeared that it was on the upzone map by the color coding, so we were a little surprised that it wasn't included. So we're hoping that the property can support increased housing for Bellevue, and it is very buffered on the south by wetlands, so it has almost no impact to the single-family neighbors. It has 6001 to the north, which is a higher density. Of course, it has the wonderful public trail also to the north, and then you have the very, very busy road 140th.
Lisa, back up just a little bit
Sure.
from the mic. From the mic. There you go.
You have the
Don't be-
busy road
There you
140th. And that seems like it would very much support higher density. And then the public space of the golf course would be so advantageous if more people could enjoy those public spaces. We personally live in the south end of Seattle, and so Bellevue needs a little more density, guys. And of course, on the, I think that's the west side, is my cousin's 20 acres, so it's 100% buffered there. It just seems like there's so much potential there, and really a beautiful big slate. And you've got a family that's all on the same page and supporting you. And I think you've got neighbors that are not impacted as much as I'm sure anywhere else. Okay, I guess that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have time for 1 or 2 additional speakers. And the next speaker is Bill Finkbeiner.
Mayor and members of the council, I'm always so inspired by the way you operate this process of allowing the public to speak. My name's Bill Finkbeiner. I've been coming into the Wilburton neighborhood for over 20 years of my life to work, and I'm commenting tonight on specifically the changes that were made to the Wilburton plan by the Planning Commission, and asking that you consider to go back to alternative 3 for heights and uses for those properties that are east of the East Rail. I'm going to give you 3 reasons real quick. Number 1, on heights, All of these properties, it's sort of a ring. We sent some maps if you had a chance to look at them. They're very close to the East Rail. Almost all of them are within the quarter-mile watershed of light rail. To push all of the density on one side of the East Rail doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It really seems like it would support the East Rail and support the light rail infrastructure to have that on both sides. To have 45 stories on one side on the west side and 16 stories limits on the east side seems like a dramatic drop. Going back to the 24 stories that were recommended in alternative 3, seems like something that would support both the East Rail and the light rail stations and all the investments that were made in there. Also speaking to the uses for this same sort of horseshoe ring of properties was changed from mixed use to residential only. And currently these are almost all small businesses, independent businesses that are operating there. And by changing the use to residential only, they would be in non-compliance if that was to pass, prior to them being redeveloped. And that can make some complications. There's ways around it, but it makes it more complicated. It makes it more difficult for those small businesses to continue to operate. So we'd urge you to also go back to the mixed use designation for these sets of properties. Finally, just as speaking sort of generally, I looked through the 700 pages of comments in the DEIS and couldn't find a single one in speaking to Wilburton Alternative 3 that was against Alternative 3. I think this really is a good place in the city to put this density, and I think the original Alternative 3 study made a lot of sense and would ask you to go back to that. Some people are going to say, well, you can always go back, go ahead and pick a different preferred alternative. But really, you're choosing a preferred alternative, obviously, not tonight. So we just ask that you consider choosing a preferred that allows a density and uses that best fit this neighborhood. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. We do have time for one additional speaker, and that will be Kendall Andrick.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. My name is Kendall Andrig. I'm a longtime Bellevue resident, president and CEO of Mutual Materials, and immediate past chair of the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. Mutual Materials headquarters is situated at 605 119th Avenue Northeast. We've been at this site since the 1960s and have watched the city grow up around us. Our location runs next to East Rail, East Link, and is the future end of the Grand Connection. As Bill said, I and several other of the Wilburton property owners were recently caught off guard when staff modified the Wilburton DEIS Alternative 3 to suggest a new preferred alternative. I'm here today to ask that the council direct staff and the Planning Commission to return to the heights and uses that were studied under Alternative 3 of the DEIS for all the properties in the Wilburton zone east of East Rail and north of Main. The council has multiple stated objectives that support returning to the heights and uses in Alternative 3, so I'll just speak to a few. As Bill said, creating density near transit and trails. Properties within a quarter mile of light rail stations adjacent to East Rail and near the only rapid rail bus line on the east side should not be restricted to lower heights. Creating affordable housing and expanding workforce in Bellevue. Lowering maximum heights will restrict the total number of housing units developed in the neighborhood and will limit the potential to contribute to the city's affordable housing strategies. Ensuring existing small businesses can continue to exist and operate. As Bill said, we'd really need to make sure that existing businesses can operate in the way in which they intend. Creating a vibrant and active East Rail and landing for the Grand Connection. Staff's new proposed preferred alternative would set maximum heights on one side of East Rail at 45 stories and immediately across to a maximum of 16 stories. This isn't a recipe for vibrant and active trail-oriented development. Not negatively impacting single-family neighborhoods. Because of the topography of the Wilburton neighborhood and the general traffic flows, the impact of increased density will be significantly less when located in a growth corridor like Wilburton. And finally, adding 35,000 new housing units and 70,000 new jobs in the next 20 years. Returning to the Alternative 3 heights and mixed-use designation for the properties east of East Rail in the Wilburton area will help the city reach its housing and jobs goals. These are ambitious goals, and reducing the options below those studied in the DIS will make them harder to reach. As a property owner, I want what's best for my property, but as a Bellevue resident and community member, I want what's best for the city and its future growth. I'm concerned that if we choose a different preferred alternative to study at this point, we'll ultimately choosing less density, less flexibility, and more restrictions. Based on this, I strongly urge the council to keep the heights and uses in alternative 3 of the DEIS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that does bring us to the 30-minute mark, and we do have a number of speakers still on our list, so I would encourage everyone, if you have not already done so, to email your comments to council@bellevuewa.gov. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, everybody who've come out tonight to give us feedback. We appreciate it and look forward to hearing your emails as well. So we now have the report of the city manager. It's a good news story.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. And
Too many people want to speak. Why you don't want to listen to
Mr.
this
Zimmerman, I'm going to
It's a
ask you,
Bellevue citizen.
I'm going to ask the police to please escort
No,
Mr.
you're
Zimmerman
not so
out.
big. Too many people want to speak. Why you don't doing this? Who are you? Huh? A Gestapo, a Führer?
Thank you very much.
Why are you so quiet?
Okay, Mr. Miyake.
so thank you, Mayor and council members.
That bosses. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Oh,
So we actually have a good news story.
Yes, we do. Something to celebrate.
And that is that Bellevue wins the Best of the 425 Magazine Award. Oh, there you go, there you go. And just by way of background, the 42 Magazine's annual Best of listings really highlights the people, places, and businesses that help make the East Side one of the best places to live in North America. The places and businesses highlighted or voted on by the magazine's nearly 200,000 readers, reaching into Alaska, Colorado, and other places. So ranking as best of really reflects the experience of readers and consumers far and wide. There's a lot going on the East Side, but the staff at the magazine say that the interest specifically in Bellevue is higher than it's been in nearly 20 years, something to be very proud of. It's important to note that beyond Bellevue's rating as the best city in the 425 area code, many of our local businesses and civic leaders also had their strongest showings yet. So this really reflects the city's work to build and maintain a high-quality place and experiences that build on our reputation as a city and a park, as well as the city's efforts to provide efficient and exceptional public services to our residents and businesses. And that
Thank
concludes
you.
my report.
We're really proud of the businesses that were all picked this year and for all the staff work that has gone behind the city of Bellevue getting this. So I'd love to get a picture with all the staff that are here tonight and the council if we could. Okay, I think Councilmember Lee has a recommendation for an appointment to the library board. Councilmember?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. It's my pleasure to make the following recommendation for appointment to the library board. It's always challenging because so many good people, talented, and of course, most importantly, very much interested and engaged, involved in the city of Bellevue. And that's why we were very much the reason to win the Best City in the United States 425 magazine is a result of the people's interest and participation. So it's always a difficult choice, but we're very fortunate. We have selected Mr. Imran Sadeka, Imran Sadeki, actually, pronounced correctly, to serve on a full term expiring on May 31, 2027. So it's my honor to make the proposal.
Okay, would you like to
second?
make the motion? Did you make the
I'm
motion?
making a motion,
Okay.
yes.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I welcome our new member to the library board. Thank you. Next up, we have the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent calendar. Second?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're on to the first of two study session items. Mr. Miyake.
So thank you, Mayor and council members. The first topic is the comprehensive plan periodic update in Wilburton vision implementation, review of preferred alternative, which would be to undergo further analysis in environmental impact statements. As council is aware, the city's in the midst of updating its comp plan, which includes the Wilburton vision implementation. The environmental review process element of this effort includes an environmental impact statement, also known as EIS, comprised of the draft EIS as well as the final environmental impact statement, also known as the FEIS. The city recently completed its draft environmental impact statement phase and is moving into the final environmental impact statement phase. The Planning Commission has spent the month of June identifying a preferred alternative of growth to assume in the final environmental impact statement analysis. And tonight's meeting will focus on the Planning Commission's recommendation on the preferred alternative. Tonight's session is the first of several meetings, and tonight's meeting is informational, provides the council the opportunity to ask staff questions of the Planning Commission, or to ask staff of questions, as well as provide feedback. So joining us at the table are a number of our planning staff. First is to the far right is Michael Cotterman, Director, as well as Janet Scholl to his left. Yes, right. And Tara Johnson to Janet's left. And coming up at the overall end here is Emil King, Planning Director, all from the Community Development Department. Also joining us is Carolyn Ferris, outgoing Chair of our Planning Commission. So thank you for being here, Chair Ferris. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I have a brief opening statement, then I'm going to turn it over to Emil and his team to go through the presentation for you this evening. Our purpose in coming before you tonight is to discuss how you want Bellevue to grow over the next 20 years. Not whether you want it to grow, that's going to happen regardless, but to talk about where that growth should occur and what it could look like. For example, in the 1980s, the council created a vision, a picture, if you will, and then a plan for the future development of downtown. That's the foundation for what we see in downtown Bellevue today. In the early 2000s, council created a vision and then a plan for Bell Red. That's the foundation for the Spring District and the future development yet to come in that area. This update of the citywide comprehensive plan and revival of the Wilburton vision are going through much the same process as the plans for those two areas. It starts with a picture that envisions the future. The preferred alternative is a refinement of that vision, though not yet fully in focus. In the case of Wilburton, council decided to start with the vision created by the Citizen Advisory Committee in 2018. For the comprehensive plan, the starting point was the vision from the council-adopted 2015 comprehensive plan, with refinements by the council, the community, and the Planning Commission. The citywide vision includes more walkable neighborhoods with nearby retail goods and services, more types of housing and more affordable housing in particular, more and better ways to get around, and preserving the feel of a city and a park, to name just a few. Over the past 16 months, staff has conducted an unprecedented public engagement process in terms of the scope, the tools, the number and diversity of people who've participated. I'm sure we didn't reach everyone yet, but the engagement will continue through adoption of the plan next year and beyond to include drafting and adoption of the development regulations that will follow adoption of the plan. Selecting a preferred alternative is an important milestone in the process. It's not the last one. There's a ways to go yet. Now that we have analyzed a wide range of alternative future scenarios, it's time to choose the parts of the alternatives that best convey a picture of the path forward. Once that's done, staff can prepare the additional environmental analysis and work with the Planning Commission and the public to develop policies and the land use map that would be part of the final plan that the council would adopt. So there's time to make changes up to adoption of the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has provided their recommendation, and they're eager to receive the additional analysis so that they can work on a set of policies and a land use map to recommend for your adoption. Tonight, staff is asking council for your feedback on the Commission's recommended preferred alternative. What questions do you have? Is there additional information that staff can provide? Are there suggested changes or particular changes that you would like to see? Tonight is not the time to paint the final brushstroke, just to add some touches to bring the vision into more focus.
Thanks for the introduction, Michael. So tonight we are here for information only. We have scheduled up to 3 meetings before your August break. Tonight we're going to be going over the Planning Commission's recommended preferred alternative. No action is required tonight, so we're just going to be listening to the discussion and questions that you might have. We are scheduled to come back next Monday night, July 24th, and we'll be following up on all of the items that you bring up tonight at that next meeting. If needed, we do have time on your August 7th agenda, so if council is ready to provide direction, not on the 24th, but the 7th, we do have that as an option as well. The agenda tonight, we're going to go over the schedule that we have for both the environmental review process as well as the Wilburton and comp plan processes. We'll be giving an overview of the draft environmental impact statement alternatives that were analyzed this past spring and summer, and then we'll go into some detail on the preferred alternative recommendation from the Planning Commission. We'll also go over what additional analysis is proposed to occur in the final environmental impact statement. So a final impact statement not only does additional analysis, but also looks at all the comments that were received on the draft EIS. And at the conclusion of our presentation, we will turn it back to the mayor to facilitate the discussion and comments that you'd like to offer up. I want to spend just a little bit of time on the comprehensive plan and Wilburton schedules. So the overall comprehensive plan was launched by the City Council back in February of 2022. So we're a bit over a year into that process. And then the Wilburton work was launched by the City Council in April of 2022. So again, a little bit over a year on that one as well. When we looked at how to be most efficient and effective in these two efforts, the Wilburton effort clearly is part of the overall comp plan update, but it's a really important part. We've been working on it for a number of years, and we're at the point where we're getting close to having something that's going to be solidified over the next 6 months to a year or so. The environmental impact work is really the technical analysis that helps policymakers and decision makers about what to do when you're looking at different options for either the Wilburton area or the overall city. So we have a really defined process that we're doing in this environmental impact statement. You can see that there's still a long way to go even after we do the final EIS. We still have the policy work to do with the Planning Commission. We have things like public hearings, and then everything does come back to the City Council for ultimate action. This initial schedule did target the end of this year to wrap up the policy work on Wilburton, and we were targeting May of next year for the policy work on the overall comprehensive plan. The question about why we're updating this plan now is important just as a refresher. This is our what's called the periodic plan update. The State Growth Management Act directs cities to update their plan every 8 to 10 years. We're now on a 10-year cycle where we're doing this. So this is a big deal to update our comprehensive plan. We last did an update in the year 2015, and then previous to that was the year 2004. There's also remaining current. The city has grown a lot, has more to grow in the future, so taking the time to do a thorough planning effort that does span a couple years really makes sense in Bellevue's evolution. We also have a lot of regional planning that we're engaged with, so a number of council members are engaged at the county level, the Puget Sound Regional Council level, and even the state level has come up with some planning things that we need to now take into account. And probably most importantly is really having a plan that reflects the council's vision. So when we look at the council vision, we see things about housing choice, housing affordability, remaining economically innovative, and protecting the environment have been the big ones so far. Digging in a little bit to the specific process to come up with the preferred alternative, we think this graphic is important to depict how we've started with the EIS process and gotten to where we are now. The colors on the graphic are not important. They're just representative of different ideas. We started back on the left-hand side with coming up with growth concepts. We worked with the community to come up with their ideas on how the city might want to grow. Those ultimately went into growth alternatives that we did public scoping on. So that was back in October of last year. And then ultimately we had 3 action alternatives or growth alternatives along with the no action alternatives. So the draft EIS has 4 different alternatives in it. We also did complementary economic analysis, equity analysis, and continued our community feedback specific to the draft EIS. We're now at the phase where we're trying to pick out the preferred alternative that the council would like us to go do additional analysis on. After the final EIS, there is still a lot of work to do by the city's planning commission, figuring out the growth strategy, working on things like the comprehensive plan map and policies, and then ultimately having a public hearing, forming a recommendation, and bring it back to council for adoption. So this is all about the comprehensive plan in Wilburton. We thought it would be important to show future actions that happen. So we are not right now working on the land use code. We are working on the plan. So a future effort is looking at different land use code amendments that would ultimately implement pieces of this plan. So the future work would still need to be initiated by the city council, planning commission work to review it, public hearing, recommendation, and then ultimately the council is the decision maker on any future land use code amendments.
I'm going to continue. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm going to continue on with the presentation and just provide some highlights. I know we did this at your last council briefing, but just to go over some of the ongoing engagement that's occurred since we launched with City Council February of last year. So it's been a year and a half. We've had ongoing community engagement throughout the process. Since its launch, we've done a total of about 54 events. They consisted of a range of different things, so 14 workshops or open houses, 19 tabling events, 14 presentations to community and neighborhood groups. We had 3 housing forums earlier this year, and then 7 additional community discussions and focus groups. If we look at this, it averages out to about almost 1 event per week, so we've been really busy with engagement. Approximately half of those events were targeted towards Bellevue's diverse or underrepresented communities, including the youth, people in emergency shelters, seniors, and other BIPOC organizations. We also have had over 1,000 participants in our online platform, so Engaging Bellevue, a lot of discussions occurring there. We also had a statistically valid survey, which was sent to all Bellevue residents, had really good participation there as well, with about 1,100 residents responding to the survey. And then additionally, our strategy team, which has been advising on various aspects of these policy conversations, including the growth concepts which have led to the alternatives, consist of about 45 representatives from various communities, developers, housing advocates, nonprofit organizations, and various entities. So as Emil talked about our four alternatives, I'm just going to briefly go over them as a quick refresher. I know we talked about that in detail at your last briefing in April. Included in the draft EIS, we have 4 alternatives. We have the no action alternative, which is used as the baseline or the benchmark in the EIS, and it represents the city's existing housing capacity, and also represents what would occur if we were to make no changes to land use, zoning, or really add any kind of additional capacity. Each of the action alternatives, so 1, 2, and 3, really build off of each other, with alternative 1 adding the least amount of capacity with jobs and housing, and alternative 3 adding the most. Alternative 1, we're looking at adding additional capacity in our mixed-use centers, so downtown Bellevue and East Main, but also adding additional capacity in our other mixed-use centers like Crossroads, Factoria, and Eastgate. We're also looking at adding what we call gentle density, so some additional density, which actually aligns with some of the 1110 provisions in our single-family areas. And then alternative 2 builds on 1, and here we're adding additional capacity within areas that are well served by transit, and then also adding additional capacity within the neighborhood centers. So areas like Newport Hills, Lakemont, Northtown are examples of the neighborhood centers. And then finally, alternative 3, which of course has the most capacity for jobs and housing. Here, it builds off 1 and 2, but here we're adding on additional capacity within a radius of the neighborhood centers, so around the neighborhood centers. Also wanted to highlight some of the comments that we received during the draft EIS comment period. So we went over the initial schedule. We had a 45-day comment period. The state requirement is 30 days, but we made the decision to extend that to 45 days right at the outset. We had three community meetings. 1 was virtual, 2 in-person community meetings to really provide an opportunity to the community to ask staff questions, get a better understanding of the alternatives, and really explain what they were so that they could provide more substantive comment. As a result, we received about 300 letters or emails of individual comments. Of course, each letter included several comments embedded within each of them. So when we did some of the analysis, it worked out to about 1,600 comments in total. So a lot of community feedback during this process, as you've already heard a lot from the community through correspondence and public comment. What we heard with review through some of the comments, affordable housing is of course a top concern. We also heard that there's a desire for walkability. We also heard this through the community engagement process, better access to more amenities within neighborhood centers, providing for more amenities where there's existing infrastructure. We also heard, on the flip side, concern about traffic impacts, impacts on the environment, as well as impacts on city services with this additional capacity that we're studying. We've also heard a lot of interest from property owners and developers in adding more flexibility for both Wilburton and also citywide. On the flip side, a different perspective, we also heard concern from community members about adding additional density within the neighborhood centers, as well as desire from developers who want to redevelop the shopping centers with a desire for more density. And then we also wanted to highlight, when we launched with City Council, some of the key parameters or key values that Council emphasized would be really critical to focus on as part of the periodic update. And they also align with Council's established vision and priorities. So an emphasis on equity and diversity, environmental sustainability, and then housing and housing affordability. And the Planning Commission really
utilized these 3 areas as a framework when they were deliberating and making their recommendation on the preferred alternative. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to the Planning Commission Chair Ferris. She's going to walk through the Planning Commission's recommendation on the preferred alternative.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, I appreciate you letting me do this remotely. So we spent 3 of our sessions in June meeting with the long meetings and went through an awful lot of information. It did also provide us opportunities to hear from a number of the public. There was a lot of interest in what was going on with this particular plan. So we heard, as Tara mentioned, everything from strong support from the community in terms of really adding the capacity for both our businesses and for housing. We also heard concerns from neighborhoods that, they didn't want that greater density to impact their neighborhood. So again, we tried really hard at the Planning Commission to hear and listen to all of that feedback as best we could. Ultimately, we were in unison in terms of the recommendation bringing forth here. So as this slide suggests, essentially going with alternative 3 for most areas throughout the city. Wilburton was somewhat of an exception. Most of it is the alternative 3, but we did have some exceptions to just go with the alternative 2, especially where it butted some existing neighborhoods. We are very interested in getting some of this analysis, just because, again, getting this right is really critical. We know that we are in a phase of tremendous growth, and the decisions that we make today will impact our neighbors in the coming, 20 to 40 years. So it's really important that we get as much information as possible. So where we had the opportunity to ask staff to expand the work of the FEIS in terms of the study, we generally fell to that. So that is our recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Ferris. And now we're just going to delve a little bit deeper into some of the key pieces on the preferred alternative. I'll focus on citywide, and then we'll switch to Wilburton. So under the citywide preferred alternative recommendation from the Planning Commission, here what we're looking at is adding additional capacity in our mixed-use centers, which is what we evaluated under the draft EIS. Here we'd be adding both additional job and housing capacity within the mixed-use centers. I'd say to a larger extent Bellevue, to a lesser extent the other mixed-use centers like Factoria, Crossroads, and Eastgate. Downtown, we're adding some capacity, but not as much as the other mixed-use centers. Within our neighborhood centers, here we're really switching the focus. Most of our neighborhood centers currently are more skewed to commercial uses, and so here what the preferred alternative entails is incorporating more of a mix of uses, so adding more of a mix between residential and commercial. We're also looking at adding additional missing middle around the neighborhood centers. The next area of focus within the preferred alternative are what we call areas of opportunity. So those are areas well served by transit around both the mixed use and neighborhood centers. And so here we're looked at adding additional capacity around both of those areas. And then finally, our single family residential areas within the city. That is something that we'll go into more detail in terms of the additional analysis needed. But our alternatives do take into account to some extent some of the provisions under 1110. However, when we were developing the alternatives and working on analysis, the legislation was not complete at that point, so we anticipated that we'd need to go back and do additional work. And so that's similar to 1337. We're going to be studying more of the implications as part of the FEIS. We also wanted to quickly highlight the differences within the neighborhood centers. There's been a lot of conversation and dialogue at both the Planning Commission and then even at Council about both desire for more density as well as concern with the increased density. So wanted to provide the council with some potential renderings or actual development within Bellevue to kind of conceptualize or give you a visual representation of what that could look like within the neighborhood centers. So under the mixed use low, which is what we're looking at in some of the neighborhood centers, and that was the Planning Commission recommendation for the majority of the neighborhood centers, they're low rise, typically between 2 and 4 stories. And then the mixed use medium, which you've heard some support for as well, that relates to about 7 to 10 stories. So just some visual representations of what those height differentials look like.
So now we'll take our attention to Wilburton. So Tara set up the framework here with the citywide preferred alternative. But stepping back and looking at Wilburton, we have here on the screen the 3 action alternatives that were studied in the DEIS. So just as a refresher to orient to these, when we're looking at these images, the color families that are represented on the maps, the red tones are essentially office residential, so assuming that the future development would have more of a focus on office development above the street level, but some opportunity for residential. And then where we see the purple shaded tones on these maps, this is the mixed use designation, and we've heard folks refer to that this evening in oral testimony, so that's denoted in the purple shaded areas on each of the 3 alternatives. And then the brown and tan shaded areas on each of these alternatives are representing, excuse me, the residential commercial designation. This would be assuming primarily residential development above commercial development that could occur on the street level. And then finally, the green shaded areas is a designation of medical office, and we had various options for that in the 3 alternatives that we studied. So just to walk you through kind of a refresher on these 3 alternatives, all of these were based upon the 2018 Citizen Advisory Committee preferred vision for Wilburton, and moving from left to right, starting with alternative 1. That alternative is the one that most closely represents that 2018 preferred vision. So that was rather our starting point in thinking about alternatives to analyze. And then with alternative 2, excuse me, with alternative 2, we were looking for additional opportunity for residential to occur in Wilburton. We've heard a lot about the changes, especially coming out of the COVID era, need for housing, and Wilburton being a great opportunity. So alternative 2 was looking at that, and that's why you see more of the brown and tan colored designation in that alternative. And then finally, alternative 3, the one that we have heard a lot about in our public comments and this evening included, is an alternative where we were exploring broader application of the mixed-use designation. So in that case, you would potentially have roughly a 50-50 chance of having office or residential built on the upper floors above retail. And so those are the 3 alternatives that we explored in the DEIS. And so now I'd just like to turn our attention to the preferred alternative, and this is the alternative that came out of the recent deliberations with the Planning Commission, is now before the council. And so it's important to recognize that here on the slide, we're showing that Wilburton area within the context of the citywide recommended preferred alternative. So the black outline there designates the study area, the Wilburton study area, and we're showing it in the context of the areas adjacent to the study area, just for helpful reference. So again, as was mentioned earlier, the approach here with the preferred alternative is to have a hybrid of what we saw in alternatives 2 and 3. So you do see a greater distribution of that residential commercial throughout the study area. The brown and tan colorations denote residential commercial, and then the lighter colored areas are that mid-rise area. So we've heard talk about the mid-rise being the proposed level of intensity development that we would recommend being studied closer to the surrounding areas, particularly to the east, that are predominantly residential currently, or lower intensity uses. And then along the East Rail Trail corridor there, the green line that goes north to south up through the study area, looked at more opportunity for that mixed-use designation. So assuming that there could be a mix of office and residential likely to occur above ground-level retail or commercial spaces, and higher intensity uses there. And then finally, as you move further to the west towards Interstate 405, you see the red, dark red colored areas. Those denote that office residential being recommended to study for those areas, assuming that there would be predominantly likely office development above ground level retail, but there could be some residential there as well. So that is essentially what embodies that preferred alternative that we're looking to study in the FEIS. And with that, just before I move on to some representative building types, just to better illustrate what we're talking about with the mid-rise and the high-rise levels of intensity, just wanted to mention that essentially between 405 and East Rail in the preferred alternative, there would be mostly a typology of H3, high-rise 3, and some high-rise 2. And then as you move to the east, looking at some high-rise 3 and some high-rise 2. And this will make a little more sense when I get to the next slide. And then as we move further to the east, there is a mix of high-rise 1 and then that mid-rise being proposed for the preferred alternative. And I think it's important to recognize that in all the 3 alternatives that were analyzed in the DEIS as well as the preferred alternative, most of the area within the study area is designated for one of the high-rise designations for study, and except for those lighter tan areas where you see the mid-rise, the RCM. So most of the rest of the study area, we're looking at studying a form of high-rise development. So similar to what Tara was sharing for consideration in the neighborhoods, for Wilburton, this slide is representing the building types that you would most likely see developed in Wilburton under the any of the alternatives 1 through 3, as well as the preferred alternative. We're looking at a range of mid-rise, which are buildings that would be approximately 7 to 10 stories in height, transitioning to that high-rise 1, which would be up to 16 stories, high-rise 2 up to 25 stories, and then high-rise 3, again predominantly nearer to 405, as well as where the Grand Connection would intersect with the East Rail, up to that high-rise 3 or up to 45 stories. So just for reference, that's what we're talking about when we're thinking of the future of the Wilburton study area.
So now just wrapping up, we wanted to talk briefly about some of the additional analysis that we anticipate we'll be studying in the FEIS. And some of these recommendations also are of pretty significant interest with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation was that we study both mandatory as well as a voluntary or incentive-based approach to affordable housing citywide. And so that's a recommendation that's being forwarded to the council. In addition, we do have to fully evaluate the extent and implications of both House Bill 1110 as well as House Bill 1337 in terms of what the capacity increases or impacts are going to be as a result of those 2 pieces of legislation. We also have the residential FAR density land use code amendment phase 2 work that's going to come before the council, and so the intent is that we'll be evaluating that as part of this EIS process. In addition, we heard a lot from the community during the draft EIS comment period relating to how does tree canopy get impacted by the additional capacity we're studying, as well as the impact of the new legislation. So tying all of those pieces together and really seeing what the impact on tree canopy is going to be. And then lastly, the transportation analysis to go along with the increased capacity that we're looking at, or changes in where the capacity goes relating to the preferred alternative as well as the new legislation. So with that, we're looking for any questions, comments, feedback that the council may have. And as Emil said, our intent is to return to you next Monday with additional information that or clarifications, and then a follow-up meeting on the 7th if needed.
Okay, great, thank you. I want to thank former Chair Ferris for all her work in the Planning Commission and all the staff. This is a huge lift that you've done, lots of hours, a lot of community outreach, and we appreciate the work that you've done. I think what makes this a little challenging is that we're looking at Wilburton concurrently with the comprehensive plan. We're doing that because we didn't want to delay one or the other. And so we challenged staff to do them together, which has been challenging for you and now will be challenging for us. But in doing that, we are going to stay to a pretty tight schedule and get this done as soon as we can, within reason. But we do have, we have to follow within a schedule, so. So tonight, we're just looking at the Planning Commission's recommendations. We get to ask questions, we can provide feedback, we can request further study in the EIS, we can recommend changes. And tonight we'll be gathering information and asking for information so that we can make good choices. We can take a vote next week, or we can wait till August 7th. And throughout that time, we have access to staff to answer any questions or concerns that we might have. So we've drilled it down a little bit to 7 items and then anything else we haven't thought of. So we'll start with Wilburton. So I'm going to be asking for any comments, questions, recommendations, requests for further study. And I just want to remind people that requesting further study or more information does not necessarily mean support for. We're just looking for more information to make decisions with. So Councilmember Robertson, I'm going to start with you. We're talking about Wilburton right now, and then I'll go to Councilmember Barksdale, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councilmember Zahn, Councilmember Lee, and Councilmember Stokes.
Thanks. So first, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission and the staff. I was at many of the meetings, and it was a lot of work. And I'd also really like to thank the public. We had tremendous public comment on this. That said, we still had some planning commissioners who were very uncomfortable making a choice because they just didn't feel ready. So even though there's this 1,000-page document, it is really overwhelming to digest it for the public, for the commission, and for the council. So anything you can do that would help it make it more digestible would be really helpful. But the planning commission still was very thorough, very thoughtful, and worked on it. One thing that would really help me, this is just an overview for Wilburton and for the entire thing, is to have a table that is a cheat sheet for what all these zoning mean, because there's no R suburban in the code. There's R1, R1.8, R.25. There's no RLL, RL. I mean, things like that. There's no, MUL, MUM that I could find. And so I couldn't find it in the appendix or anything. There was a table on the existing zoning. There wasn't a table that I could find that went with the proposed comp plan map. So if you can point me to it, that would be great. If not, we really should create one because I'm sure not just council members want to know, what is RLL? What is MU high? So that would be really, really helpful. Then with regard to Wilburton, my understanding is that everything that was in alternative 1, 2, and 3 is already studied. And then what we're doing is we're looking at different mixes in the preferred alternative that would then give new information. But alternative 3, which we had some people commenting on, has already been studied, and so we already have the information on that. Is that correct?
That is correct. The overall EIS is a combination of the draft EIS, which we've done, and the final EIS together.
Right, and then so that it'll still have studies 0, 1, 2, and 3 plus the preferred. It's just a new alternative. So I'm relatively comfortable going in. Overall, and I was the one that really pushed when we looked at the Wilburton alternative to make the preferred CAC recommendation the base. You guys took that and jacked it up big time. So I in general, I think a lot of the comp plan is a little bit aggressive. So Wilburton is less concerned to me because it is a very, it's part of the growth corridor. And I may lean more towards alternative 3. We did have a lot of discussion at Planning Commission about the impacts on Lake Bellevue. I am very eager to see, it might be a little aggressive around Lake Bellevue in particular. I'm very eager to see how we make sure that that amenity, that's a public amenity that people don't even know exists, how we can make that something that's more accessible. It shouldn't just be ringed by private buildings because it's a lake in our city. So I'll be very curious about that. But on the other hand, you know, the preferred alternative is fine for Wilburton as far as I'm concerned to study. It's just a mix and a hybrid of some of the others that'll give us more information. And then I'll hold my comments on the general comp plan. I have some more comments on that.
Thank you, Councilmember Robertson. Well done. Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
I'm also comfortable with studying the preferred alternative since alternative 3 has already been studied, but I do have a question about some of the comments about it dropping back closer to alternative 2 versus sticking with 3 and the implication for housing. So as I look at alternative 2 at the moment, it's still similar in terms of mid-rise and versus high-rise, like the distribution of mid-rise and high-rise as alternative 3. Is that right? It's just that there's the mixed-use aspect.
Yes, in alternatives 2 and 3 in the DEIS, they are fairly similar in terms of those heights. And then in the preferred alternative, we looked at more opportunity for residential and also considered scale and desire for affordability and neighborhood feel. So it goes to also what we heard during our public processes in addition to the DEIS comments. So I would agree that many of those official DEIS comments were very much pro alternative 3, but we did hear a lot from community about neighborhood potential for Wilburton to be something a little different in that regard. So that did weigh into.
Got it. And I guess, so what would be missing on the east side of East Trail is the businesses, right? Because it's not a mixed use, so the retail would, the ground level retail.
Yeah, I'd like to make a clarification on that. So for that residential commercial designation, the assumption there, and again, this is for analysis, but it is based on an actual zoning you could find in Bellevue. The idea is that you would have residential development on the upper stories, but at the street level, there would be opportunity. It would be still mixed-use development in that model where you have residential on the upper floors, and then on the first floor or 2, you would have the retail and commercial opportunity. So there would be jobs potentially developed in the tan areas on the map, those RC designated areas. But the assumption, the main difference between the mixed use and the residential commercial is what we would assume would occur on the upper floors. So on the residential commercial, the assumption would be basically 100% residences above the commercial.
Got it.
And in that mixed use, we would be modeling an assumption of roughly a 50-50. Some could be office, some could be residential, some could have both. But in terms of modeling and analyzing, the assumptions were that it would be closer to 50-50 in the purple areas or those mixed use areas, if that helps.
Got it. And I think given the discussion, in the survey, there was the comment about, I think a survey was like suggesting that we're not hitting the mark in terms of the community feedback in terms of affordable housing, if I remember that correctly. And then there was another point I was going to make, but I'll come back if I remember it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Great work by staff on this, and especially the commission, and want to thank in particular the liaison, Councilmember Robertson, and for her leadership as liaison to this commission to wade through all this tremendous amount of information. This is no small task for sure. I really look forward to these studies coming back to us. And I usually take the approach of, more information is better. And I normally like to say that a final EIS, is as broad and flexible enough as possible so that, it really doesn't handcuff this council. But in this case, just focusing on Wilburton, I'm comfortable with the preferred alternative. I'm very concerned about the impact to the single-family neighborhoods in Wilburton. Again, this is just a study. We have a long way to go. This is not final. But there could be a tremendous impact to these residents in this city and in the Wilburton community, and I want to be very cognizant of that and respectful of that. And these are a lot of long-term residents. So at the same time, obviously, as been mentioned here, and by all the comments and all the great outreach that has been done, we do want that density. I feel more comfortable on the west side of East Trail than on the east side. But even there, I think there can be potentially some light density, and I'm glad we had the clarifying comment there that there could be some jobs there for small businesses, et cetera. But we really need to, again, I'm just going to emphasize this over and over, really focus on what makes Bellevue special. And it's time and time again, it's our neighborhoods. And as much as we do have that need for density because of the jobs, because of the growth, and the commitment by this council to put a lot of that density on light rail in those transit areas, that makes sense, absolutely. But we've always talked about sustainable growth. And in my mind, sustainable growth is maintaining that growth in those core growth centers, but always protecting the single-family neighborhoods at the same time. So that's, kind of what I'm looking at here as we go forward and as we get the studies back. But again, I'm comfortable at this point that we move forward with the Wilburton under the preferred alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I appreciate the comments before me, and particularly the impact on the existing neighborhoods. And I think about when we did downtown, and we drew a line through a single-family neighborhood and said, this is going to be our urban core. And, it was a pretty bold move considering how many single-family homes were within that urban core. But we came up with the wedding cake idea. And I wonder, can we look at that? Can we study how that would impact the development of Wilburton if we were to apply that wedding cake idea around the single-family neighborhood? So that's one, you don't have to answer me now. The other one is really trying to create some kind of a view corridor for the people on the east side of Wilburton and the East Trail. So I think it's great to put the higher buildings on the west side of Wilburton, but also trying to maintain some kind of view corridors, so it's not just a wall. And then dictating development by whatever makes a walkable community. Whatever it takes to have that walkable community, can we apply that to this? And does that fit for alternative 3 or 2 or whatever, which preferred alternative works best for that? So I'm working a little bit backwards, but that's what I'd like more information on. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. I too appreciate all of the work. When I went through and I was looking at the fact that we've been at this for 18 months of looking at feedback and really for Wilburton CAC back in 2018. So it's been a long time in the making. I want to just make sure that I heard things correctly. I think what I heard is that although tonight we're looking at both Wilburton and citywide, for Wilburton, what we're doing now is really offering up a fourth alternative of analysis that we have not yet studied. So we're not actually saying that we have I think this is where the terminology may be tripping me up. We're still studying, So even though we're calling this the preferred alternative, we are actually studying this as though it's an alternative 4 of a height and a use that we didn't study in alternatives 1, 2, or 3. And the reason I'm asking is because when I look at the alternative 1, 2, and 3 from before, the preferred alternative looks like it's actually an alternative 2 minus, because the heights are actually even slightly lower than that, as well as changing the usage. Is that right?
So in a few cases, that is correct. There are some areas where the heights are slightly less than what was studied in alternative 2 or 3. The interesting thing is that we are looking at a greater application of residential opportunities, so the residential numbers actually went up a bit from some of our early numbers that we've been looking into compared to the other alternatives. So, but in most cases, the intensity is the same. There's just a few instances where in that they tend to be further to the east. So we did hear from a couple people tonight. The representative for the Mutual Materials site, that was one of the sites where I think it goes from H2 in the Alt 3 to H1. So again, it's still a high rise, but it would be the 16 stories in the preferred instead of the up to 25, which was Alt 3. And then we also heard from, I believe it was Mr. Morelli and that property that's located near First Avenue. Again, it's to the east, and that was another one that went from, I believe it was, oh, thank you, Tara. Went from H1 to H1 to RCM. So, do we have a pointer on for the slide?
I think there might be one on that,
Yes, that will.
but they're not going to be able to see it.
Oh. So.
You can use your cursor.
You can, yeah, on the computer.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay. So this is the property roughly that we were talking about, where we had somebody, Mr. Morelli was speaking to this property, and it was H1 in the Alt 3.
It doesn't work.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh.
Sorry.
We don't control the cursor either, apparently.
Okay, so I think I can walk you through it. If you look at your screen, you see the east trail going north to south. You see First, and just south of First, there's a kind of it's not quite a triangular shaped property designated RCM, and then right to the south of it would be I believe that's the Botanical Gardens there in Main Street. So that kind of, it's not quite a triangular piece, and it's designated RCM in the preferred, and in the alternative 3, it was the H1. So RCM would be allowing up to approximately 10 stories, and the H1 would be allowing up to approximately 16 stories. So that's one of the areas, and then the other area was, again, the Mutual Materials, which went from H2 to H1 in that area.
So, okay.
Yes.
So it seems to me that maybe what we were getting feedback about is really having an understanding of why we were looking at the lower heights. So could you expand on that a little bit more so there's a better understanding? Because we are
Yes.
looking at these as additional alternative scenarios to be studied, correct?
Yes. And so the difference between alternative 3 and the preferred, where the heights are slightly less, is predominantly to the east of the East Trail. And thinking there was we'd heard a lot of interest in affordable housing, neighborhood, 15-minute neighborhood. And again, this goes through the body of work we've done along the way with community engagement, and knowing that citizens have been saying, and people participating in saying, we'd really like to see a neighborhood that's a little bit different than a downtown neighborhood, or possibly even a neighborhood center. Wilburton could be something unique. So that's what we were looking at with the recommendations, to have to the east of the East Trail more of the H1 and the mid-rise, as opposed to the H2 or the H3, which would go up to 25 to 45 stories of development. So that was the consideration in the recommendation with the preferred alternative.
Okay, And then my other question is, the difference between RC and MU. So with an
Yes.
MU, residential is still allowed. It's just that if we had an RC, then any commercial would only be confined to the lower 1 or 2 stories? Or,
So-
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand, when we choose a different designation, what does that functionally look like as we think about what 10 or 20 years from now a development mixture might look like in terms of commercial, residential mixes of amongst the floors?
I wonder if you can take this offline
Oh,
and answer
okay.
those
I
questions
have
there.
if it's okay, Mayor, I have I think hopefully a quick response.
sure.
Or something I just want to just say again, or if we haven't said it before. So for the purposes of the analysis, these are the assumptions we're making, but these are still just alternatives we're studying. We have a lot of work ahead of us to actually develop the specific land use designations that then would ultimately lead to the land use code amendments for Wilburton. So what I can share with you tonight is what we're studying. So they're assumptions, but we're not exactly, so we're not at this point selecting the zoning, if that helps. So when I'm referring to residential above commercial at a street level, that's what we're building into our modeling when we give numbers to the transportation engineers to put into the traffic model. We say, well, we're assuming everything above floor 1 or 2 is going to be residential for the RC, and in the mixed use, we're assuming it would be about 50-50, either office or, and so that's for the purpose of modeling, so that we can study the potential impacts to transportation or other services, et cetera, if that's helpful. So, and then ultimately it will lead to zoning, but there's a lot of room for modifications, finessing, to having more conversations about exactly what does that mean residential above commercial.
And we can have some follow-up conversations offline, Councilmember, if that would help. Real quick, if I could address your first point about this is a fourth alternative, that's another way to look at it. Preferred alternative is a term of art that's in state legislation. That's why we use that. It's just part of the, excuse me, part of the naming and the process. But it is another alternative if you want to consider it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Comprehensive plan is very important for the city. It's an ongoing process, like Michael mentioned. It's telling us where Bellevue is going. Bellevue has been and is growing. So we need to make sure we have a plan that's a path that shows us, where to go. We do that by using stepping stones, each one at a time. But each one has to be right, has to be reflecting what we believe now, because we cannot predict the future. But if the plan today, the stepping stone is not good piece of foundation.
You know what, Councilmember Lee, I'm going to ask you to kind of refine down to just Wilburton right now.
I'm talking about Wilburton.
Well, you're discussing the entire comp plan.
Wilburton is part of the overall.
We're pulling
comp plan.
Wilburton out
So I'm
separately.
pointing out the Wilburton plan is very important.
Good.
It's that piece of foundation we're talking about. Okay, that's it. If it's not important, I don't need to say anything. So I believe that we have Wilburton visualized as what we wanted, based on current situation, what we have. And I compliment you actually doing a very good outreach. I recall that you're trying to reach out to the new immigrant communities who, this is a very complex issue, okay? And most of them are not politically connected, are not familiar with government process, so it's a challenging thing. So as a result, I think we still hear some people saying that, well, we need to have more information. Okay, I think that's an ongoing process. But you made a very valiant effort, but we can see, we could do more. So thank you. I believe that based on today's situation, Wilburton is a brand new open space. It's connected to downtown. It's a place that need to connect downtown to the rest of the city. And we have great opportunity there. We have the auto road, and we have no residential area per se, and it's topographically protected from the east, from 120th, 124th, and west is the freeway, and south is Main Street, and north is Northeast 8, well-defined. And I agree with the mayor that somebody said, I'm not sure who, the Lake Bellevue is an important asset, so that might be an exception we need to consider separately. But, other than that, I believe it's a great opportunity for us to make sure Wilburton has the most potential, maximize its highest potential. We talk about downtown Bellevue, I do. Downtown Bellevue is the goose that lays the golden egg. There's no reason why Wilburton cannot be the second goose that lays the golden egg. So I believe that what we have to consider is absolutely, I agree with the deputy mayor, we have to protect the residential, we have to protect the view, the ethnic vision, So, but I ask the staff, when we talk about how many stories, I don't know whether they're arbitrary or not, but I hope that you explain to me how do you tell whether it's 45-story, 26-story, 14-story, or 10-story, or 5-story, based on what, right? I need to know. If it's blocking the residential, it's invading on their whatever they're concerned about, that's legitimate. But if it's just number, I like to know what it is. And second, I think our main goal right now, the city of Bellevue is talking about, stone, we set up in the future. We are very interested in providing housing, very much so, housing. We're talking about 35,000 units, we're talking about 60,000 units, maybe even 90,000 units. We're gonna have lots of people coming in here, and companies are asking for us to provide housing to people. So the growth is going to be tremendous. So we need to know, we need to get as much as we can, every possibility of having housing, which doesn't impede with other neighborhood, other concerns that we may be looking at. So we need to do it right. And also we need to do transportation. We need other infrastructure to go along with this growth. So that needs to be done as well. So I'm glad that you're talking about it. You're talking about looking at traffic study, looking at other infrastructure that might need it. I don't care what you do. I don't know how many offices you build, how many housing you build. If people cannot get around, people are not going to come here. They'll be just sitting in their little cubicle. What are you going to do? So I believe these are the things that I would like to get some idea from you. Because what do we do today? It's not that we're going to come back to study again. No. The last time we had the comp plan, the downtown, you talk about the wedding cake situation. I was around. I saw this growth. I saw this wonderful growth Bellevue's been doing. But because we have been laying foundations every step of the way, and we're doing it right now, it's important. We cannot just hurry it through just because we want this. We need to incorporate all the things we want. I think we're doing that. So
Thank you for your input, that's great.
so I don't know the heights, okay, the density, and also how do you determine all those information that you are giving to us? That's what we'll provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. I'm really pleased that we're addressing this, and we're doing it on apparently a fairly fast track, which is something we've been working on for a long time, to be able to do that and not take 10 years to get something done. So I'm hoping that we will be working on this actively going at some point, but we're still trying to figure out where we're going. One thing I want to get cleared up a little bit is what I'm hoping is that we'll have more conversations with staff, and we'll get some input in terms of, that's just not saying, okay, the Planning Commission recommends this alternative, and so we're behind that, and this is what we're working on. Because I think there are some questions come up, and I'm hoping that we get, your goal is to really help us understand where we're going and what the proposition is, and if there need to be changes. So I think that's what we have to stick on. I know you're doing that. Could you take back to the other, where I can see all three of those pieces? I want to make a point on that. It seems that, and this doesn't seem like when you look at two, it seems like it's moved some of the categories around in here and putting more what seems to be housing and neighborhoods in here. What neighborhoods are we talking about that are going to be impacted by growth and by tall buildings?
So that shows up a little bit better on the other slide that we showed the preferred alternative, but in general, it is those areas to the east.
But more, it's not just on cross, you don't cross the light rail, I mean the East Trail, and then all of a sudden you have neighborhoods. The
Right.
neighborhood's up further, and we're going to put a lot of housing in neighborhoods in these areas when it comes down to it. When we start building buildings and having people living there, we're going to have neighborhoods there too. What I'm saying is, I think drawing an artificial line that says on this side is the neighborhoods and on this side is not, is not really tying in with the reality of it. And I think we can do neighborhoods, we'll work on the single-family neighborhoods now, which will be changing because of the legislature and other things too. But we can work with those without, really disturbing them and putting things a little better, I think, with a little more towards three that's been set. And it's not pushing way over here and the pieces that go along with East Trail. There's just something about separating East Trail and taking away a good bit of its charm and what it's for and what it's, and that's a very important piece as well. It's just something that is real, something that is unique for Bellevue and unique for this area. And I'm concerned that it may end up not making it the best place, as good as it could be and should be. The other factor is I think we're looking at some areas that all two and what we're talking about really limits to a great extent the ability of a number of people, and some who have been here talking tonight and others, to develop the land that's there and the opportunity. And with the idea that somehow or other this is helping neighborhoods somewhere. So I hope we'll dive a little deeper into this and look at something that's not as kind of artificial in the sense, well, if we have to put this block here, we need to put it over here. And I think we can do it. And the other factor is that I'm hoping that, I know that, part of your role is to, when the commissioner board makes a recommendation, then you present it to us and why it's good. But I know that we still will have the conversations, can ask questions about if you take these two and you really look at them, you could also give an opinion as to which one actually works better. I mean, that's the difficult thing about the system in a sense, but, and I think you're doing that now, but I'm just hoping we don't get so much where we're going to have to put the Planning Commission recommendation as it is in place, and that's not what we're doing. It's a great step forward, but I just want to make sure we're looking at coming up with the best thing we can do, and there are a lot of different opinions on that. And the last thing I want to mention is I think it's interesting, and you can have your back and forth on this, but the letter, the proposal, or the conversation from the paper that Amazon has submitted is I think is outstanding in terms of addressing how Wilburton can be the best it should be. And it is not something that's anti-neighborhoods. And I think we can work together with those. So I'm hoping we're not just saying, okay, this is a recommendation, we're going down this line. We're looking at that, and I know the Planning Commission is talking about doing more work themselves as well. So it's a work in progress. That's the main thing I want to say, is that I think we have a lot of great plans here, and I don't want to see something looked at and put aside because we decide to, instead of this block, we want to take this block. We're still looking where the blocks should be and how they all fit in together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Go
if I
ahead.
could.
Yeah.
I think Councilmember Stokes, you made several good points here, and I think if you're amenable, I think it'd be helpful for staff to follow up with you offline on some of these, because I heard some questions in there more about what was the thinking behind some of these recommendations, and we can provide more of that information
Okay.
to you and maybe get more, more specifically what information would be helpful to you in terms of reaching a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So the next thing on the list is, so we're looking at the comp plan citywide. We've teased out Wilburton, and now we're going to look at all the other mixed-use centers combined, including Bellred, Downtown, Eastgate, and Factoria. So I'm going to start with myself, and I'm just going to say I like the Planning Commission's recommendations on those. So I have no comments, questions, or other things to mention. Councilmember Robertson.
You said we're going to talk about
The other mixed-use centers.
the others
which
mixed-use
include
centers. Okay.
Bellred, Downtown, Eastgate, Factoria.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to do it in this order. I have some concerns that they might, this is, again, for the whole thing, that it may be too aggressive, particularly in the Factoria neighborhood. I am very in favor of mixed use. I am very in favor of walkability. I'm very in favor of adding more housing. This plan adds far more density than we need. Far, far more to meet the growth targets, even before we factor in House Bill 1110 and 1337. And I'm concerned about the traffic impact studies. So I would like more information on the transportation impacts, including looking at projected vehicle counts, intersection delay. I think that the DEIS just assumes that's going to be the case, and we're just going to do transportation demand management, ped and bike. To me, when we did there was a 2018 DEIS that studied land use changes. It looked at what's the appropriate traffic mitigation. I think that we need to have that level of detail for this, because we're talking about significantly increasing density. And while I support doing that, our infrastructure needs to keep up with it. Both roads, bus stops, pedestrians, and utility infrastructure. So I would personally, because we're going to do a lot on transportation demand management. We're going to do a lot on transit to the extent we can, although Metro's cutting routes right now. We're going to do a lot on ped and bike. That is not going to cut it if we actually have this much density develop. So I would like to have the information at the end of this where the council can say, wait a second, we can't put that density there. It's going to gridlock this area, beyond belief, and there'll be, 5-minute intersection delays or whatever the number is. Without that information, how can the council actually analyze the alternatives? They really can't. So that's more information I would like. The actual neighborhood centers, I think that definitely density is good.
We're just on the other mixed use.
Mixed use,
Oh,
that's what I meant to say.
yeah.
The commercial centers, sorry. The added density is good. I think that we might want to scale it back to alternative 1 or 2, frankly. Even alternative 1 is an upzone. We're going to upzone, and we're going to add more housing. I don't think that we need to do alternative 3 on the neighborhood centers. I think it's too aggressive. And I would add that when you go to high capacity or high rise housing, you're not going to get the affordable housing. When you go to mid-rise housing, that's when you get affordable housing, because whether it's light gauge steel or concrete and steel, it is too expensive to have affordable housing unless you have mandated units, and then everyone else who's in that building pays a whole lot more. So, I'm more in favor of mid-rise mixed use, and I'm really sad to look at just on a personal note, the idea of the Factoria Theater might go away. That's been just a godsend for the whole South Bellevue region. A lot of people use that. So, mixed use is the key. Mid-rise is the answer. Let's scale it back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with a couple questions or I guess comments, but may circle back. But I think as I think about this being like the 10-year plan and the fact that we're growing at such a rapid pace, and the fact that, when we talk about having a radius around the neighborhood centers, supports walkability and also supports those businesses. I guess what comes to mind for me in terms of the infrastructure and the services and so forth is that the comp plan actually helps determine some of those things in the future, right? So, and I guess my question would be if by having the comp plan speak to, say, alternative 3 or 2-2 hybrid of 2 and 3, wouldn't that help the city determine what's needed then to support whatever the preferred alternative is in the future?
So right now we're on the mixed-use centers, just to
Oh,
list
sorry.
it. We
That's
got so it's downtown, Bell Red, Wilburton, East Main, Factoria, Eastgate. So was your question more to the mixed-use centers or the neighborhood centers, which I think are gonna be in a few minutes?
I think it's around the neighborhood centers, but
Okay.
I'm fine with the mixed use then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the mixed-use centers, we, some of them, like Wilburton and Bell Red, are going through probably the most proposed changes in this effort, and then the other ones are more modest, though there are changes down in the Factoria area that Councilmember Robertson pointed out. Part of our analysis is looking at the mix of uses down there, how it might want to change in the future, so studying things like more housing, and then transportation is a big deal that we've gotten a lot of comments on the DEIS about doing a more robust analysis in the FEIS on things like transportation.
Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It's really challenging when we don't have all the information to really weigh in on this, because as Councilmember Robertson really nailed was the fact that, there's so many pieces that we're still looking for in terms of the transportation impact, the density impact. When it comes to mixed-use centers, the housing growth there, well, how many units specifically, how many would be affordable? Would they be affordable? So it's just really challenging in a number of different ways, but that's why we're doing this study, and this will be helpful, and certainly understanding the implications of House Bill 1110 and 1337. The sooner that we have this type of data in front of us and information in terms of the overall impacts is really is really critical, but. Again, I think what's been said is already my thoughts in terms of as we move forward and how we look at this and how we make determinations on going forward. But and actually, if there's one question you can't answer for me right now is, can we not do 1110 at the same time, or look at these other House bills at the same time or do we have to finish the EIS first before we can take a look at the impacts of these types of studies, or can we do them concurrently? Because that would really be beneficial, might speed up the process as well, but I know you have limited, resources. I don't know if that's something that we could accomplish, but that would give us an overall better scope of what the impacts would be.
Yeah, our intent is to actually study House Bill 1110, which is the middle housing bill, and 1337, which is the ADU bill, in the FEIS. So we have that opportunity
That's one
in
of
the
our
preferred
topics.
alternative to analyze those.
And at the same time, okay, great. Just want to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. So, I think that when we look at these mixed-use centers, that's an opportunity for us to have more density in those areas that will tend to have transit access. And I was thinking about when I first moved to Bellevue almost 30 years ago, the Factoria Mall. It's gone through a lot of permutations. I still remember when an Ernst used to be there many years ago. So I agree with the discussion around the fact that it can be frustrating in the process, that we'd like to better understand these impacts before we decide what makes sense. But I just want to confirm what you presented, which is that in the FEIS, the additional study and analysis is on affordable housing mandatory versus voluntary, tree canopy analysis, and transportation analysis. That's correct, right? And then from what I remember, the last time we went through this 10 years ago, is that once we actually have a plan, then the transportation CIP investments goes into the TFP, and it goes into the transportation impact fee. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when we think holistically about what we're talking about, this is one step in a whole process, and we aren't done with those other pieces yet. We're right now just trying to decide what even goes into the mix for the further analysis. And again, I'm just trying to make sure I'm seeking really good clarity about what we're calling the preferred alternative, right? So for this Victoria area, there will be further transportation analysis of this proposed alternative before any decisions are made by us. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Lee.
Well, these are, very big decisions. And, we talk about Victoria Mall and others that's been, similar to what it is today, it used to be, for good reasons. We have lots of opportunities elsewhere which we need to focus on. And that's one of the reasons why I focus really a lot on Wilburton, because Wilburton's a great area. We have 3 transit Sunrail stations. We have transit coming in. But if you apply these same alternative principle to mixed-use centers and neighborhood centers, we don't have those. We don't have mass transit. We don't have all the
Councilmember Lee, I just want to clarify, we're only talking about mixed-use centers right now.
That's what I'm going to.
We're going to have a
okay?
conversation
I'll
on
focus on major
neighborhood
elements
centers
of
later.
mixed-use centers.
Because you're right,
But
they're very
somebody
different.
talk about neighborhood centers, and they can do it. I just said that the reason's the same, no difference. So when you go to a neighborhood center, I will shut up. But I'm saying that this applies to a neighborhood center as well. Okay?
Okay.
Other people can do it. I can't. If I use the word beside mixed-use centers, you told me not to. Anyway, so the point is we need to look at traffic. We need to look at transportation study. We need to look at safety. I mean, these are all very important. And, whether we have control or we don't have control. And we've got all these other things Wilburton is working on. So let's focus on one thing. Let's figure out how we can get the biggest bang for the buck, which is look at, the areas that we are already working on. So I agree. I would love to have a mixed-use center that you described, but if we'd like to have Victoria, if you can make it happen. But I'm just giving you my suggestion that you have these challenges, which other councilors mentioned: transportation, multimodal, mass transit, safety. Nobody mentioned safety. I mentioned it. Other traffic improvements as well, and other things, other amenities, neighborhood concerns, open space. All that is part of the consideration. So my suggestion is let's maximize, focus on what we have, in Wilburton. And I don't know why, when you talk about higher buildings, you would have less density. It's up to the builders, how they figured it out. I heard Councilman Robertson mention maybe it's not as economical, but I would like to hear what you have to say. Why is it? And maybe, the builders, developers can say, well, we have other ways to handle this. So this is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Well, on this particular one, I agree with the comments by the deputy mayor and by Councilmember Zahn. And I think we've asked the good questions, and there's a lot to deal into this, but we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Great. Okay, with that, we're going to take a break, come back at 25 after, and resume with neighborhood centers. back to order here. Thank you, staff, for being so on time. So the next topic that we're going to work on is neighborhood centers. And that includes Northtown, Bell East, Kelsey Creek, and Newport Hills. So we're just seeking feedback to the staff, requests for further study, comments, where you are on the Planning Commission recommendations, all those things. So let's start with Councilmember Zahn.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. All right, neighborhood centers. So I wanted to make sure that I was clear about what I was reading, because there's a lot of dots on this map. So the neighborhood centers used to be neighborhood commercial, or designation like that, neighborhood business, sorry.
In some cases, I believe, most cases, it's commercial business, so CB.
Okay,
It's a mix of.
CB and NB.
Yeah, it's a mix of neighborhood business and community business. Most of them are the NB designations.
okay. And then the proposal is that for all of them, they are mixed-use low, is that correct?
The Planning Commission's recommendation is mixed-use low for the neighborhood centers, yes.
Okay, so we've gotten some questions about whether every neighborhood center is the same from the standpoint of the topography, the opportunity, what the community and the neighborhood might be looking for. So I just wondered if you can comment on that. I mean, there's an awful lot of comments and reams of documents so that we can better understand whether any other options should be considered amongst all of these neighborhood centers that each have their own characteristics.
Yeah, what I might suggest is we actually have an economic analysis that we referred to, and we can either provide a summary of that in your next packet or meet with you offline to go through the different facets of the neighborhood centers, because there are differences to the neighborhood centers, both in their catchment area, the area that their customers come from, the size of the centers, the location in the city, et cetera.
Okay, and based on the specific economic analyses, the proposal of the MU low matches what the analysis shows and the needs of that neighborhood?
I will let
And the specifics.
past Chair Ferris weigh in as well, but I can start out saying that the commission did discuss this. There was a mixed-use low was analyzed in the draft EIS, and then mixed-use medium was discussed at the commission as recommended by the staff. And ultimately, the commission did recommend that mixed-use low be applied to the neighborhood centers.
Okay, so mixed-use medium was not considered at all, or
It was
evaluated?
discussed at the planning commission.
It was discussed. And again, this is not that we're saying this is what we want it to be zoned. This is what we want to have studied. So we do recognize that there are vast differences between these different neighborhood centers. So my guess is by the time we're done with all of this, you're going to have different zoning designations on each of them. But we want it to be studied so that we have enough information to be able to make those kinds of decisions.
Okay,
And I would just add to that, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe the mixed-use medium was not studied in any of the alternatives. So if there is something that the council wants studied at that level for any or all of the neighborhood centers in order to consider any additional zoning in the future, that would need to be part of the preferred alternative for analysis in the final EIS.
So to just clarify, the Planning Commission's recommendation is mixed-use low, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
okay, and there isn't a hybrid designation between mixed-use low and mixed-use medium? Because I'm just trying to understand, so currently, the neighborhood centers can already do a low-rise of up to 2 to 4 stories with the neighborhood business,
They're a bit lower than that. It's probably 2 to 3 stories
2 to 3
generally.
stories.
And we were with the MUL, which was studied in the DIS, was intended to look for some redevelopment opportunity, but not a vastly order of magnitudes difference. This graphic does do a good job of showing the mixed-use L on the left-hand side, and then the mixed-use medium, the way it was described in the map, was 7 to 10 stories. So you can see there's quite a difference there. So I think that was part of the commission's discussion.
Okay, so if we don't ask for any other alternatives to be studied, then none of the other alternatives of even the 5-story would be contemplated.
That's correct for the neighborhood centers.
Seems to me if we're talking about a 10-year plan, that if we're talking about studying for economic analysis and understanding, that leaving that unstudied seems like we have not done our due diligence. But I want to understand what my other colleagues are thinking about. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
I don't have that much to say about it. I think this is our long-term vision, which I like in general, but of course, like you were talking about specifically, and also, again, depends on how do we handle all our needs, starting with housing, starting with other growth pictures, development, and so I'll wait to talk about the specific, for each specific area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I don't see any reason we can't include going up to 5, 7 stories, depending on the neighborhood. It just seems very artificial and very, in the long run, as the city grows and all, just kind of shortchanging the community, people who live there, and the city to just limit it to low-rise 4 to 7. That's just not keeping up with the with Bellevue and what we're going towards. And mid-rise is at those 2 levels, I think it's around a lot of places. You go to other cities around us, it's just not something that's going to be deleterious to the neighborhood. It's going to help the neighborhood in various ways.
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson.
Sure. So, alternative 3 was mixed-use low, right, for the neighborhood centers. Now, can you tell me the names of all the neighborhood centers? Because I'm trying to remember all of them. So there's Newport Hills, there's Lakemont Village.
Yeah, Lakemont.
There's
Lake
Bell
Hills.
East, which is the QFC by Sunset Hills, right?
Yeah, Bell East, Lake Hills, Kelsey Creek.
Where the library is.
Yeah.
And
North
Kelsey Creek at Main and
Yeah,
Northeast.
Kelsey Creek Shopping Center.
Main and 148.
Yeah. And then Northtown on Bellevue Way.
Okay. And Northtown's where the QFC is?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So generally support the planning commission recommendation, because, I want to just focus on something that one of my colleagues asked. Mixed use low is an upzone, modest, but it's an upzone for every single one of these properties, isn't it? Yes? Okay, so I think that's enough. These should be walkable, they should be human scale, they should be a gentle transition. That said, going to 5/1 for Kelsey Creek and Northtown might be okay. I would, if the council wants to do that, I would support having a mixed use 6, whatever you want to call it, up to 6 stories for those 2 centers. But I think mixed use low is really the appropriate. You look at Lakemont Boulevard. Do we want 10 stories on Lakemont Boulevard? No. Do we want 10 stories in Newport Hills where it's a 2-lane road in and out? No, we don't. I think it's really important to have graceful transitions, to have accessible, walkable areas, and to have things be a human scale. So I'm supportive of the Planning Commission recommendation, but I would be willing to add Kelsey Creek and Northtown to a mixed-use 6. I'll just call it, I'll make it up. Because the mid-rise here on this slide, the mid-rise 5 stories is not, that's actually really closer to the mixed-use low if you just took the top story off. That would be what would be allowed without the top story under the zoning that is proposed for all of these. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant upzone on some of these centers. So, anyway, I'll hold my comments then. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm curious from a study perspective, if we were to look at the 5 to 7 stories, it's just a study. We could always do less, but we would understand the impacts at the higher levels, right? I would support looking at the 5 to 7.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the recommendation from the Planning Commission on this as well, but wouldn't be opposed to, some of those neighborhood centers which have a little bit more density already associated with them or are on transit lines already. I just really want to make sure that we don't treat Lakemont like Kelsey Creek and Newport Hills like Lake Hills Village, for example. So they're all distinctive. They're all different. They all have different needs, and they all have different capabilities. So that's the core takeaway for me is that they're each different. They're each got their own unique characteristics, and they all have their different needs, and they all have their pluses and minuses as it is right now. But treat them as individual neighborhood centers. Thank you.
And I'll just say, I'm very interested in just studying all the possibilities for all the neighborhood centers and seeing what the impact would be. But my goal, I think this is such an opportunity to really create that 12-minute city in these areas. So whatever it takes to create a 12-minute city, it's got to work not only for the developed area, but for the surrounding neighborhoods. It has to be an asset to those existing neighborhoods. So I'd love to study that a little bit and see what comes up. Okay, now we're on to areas of opportunity. What do you have here, this slide? Oh, it's the list. Okay, so we're doing areas of opportunity. So let's start with Councilmember Zahn again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I was actually trying to find all of the places we were calling opportunity, areas of opportunity. We've gotten some feedback about concerns from Lochleven, but it wasn't clear to me whether is Lochleven the only area of opportunity, or I need a little more guidance about what exactly we're pointing at, that we're talking about. But I will
believe you have a map, do you not?
For this meeting, this is our scale. At the next meeting, we're happy to bring back a more zoomed-in map on the
Okay.
areas of opportunity.
That
But I'm
would be
happy to describe what they are, if that would be helpful.
That would be helpful. I mean, I have walked in Lochleven, and, we've recently had some discussions when we were looking at the raising of the heights in the OLB area in downtown. And so we had had this discussion about whether we were looking at raising heights and had determined that we were not going to raise the heights in that neighborhood. So I guess I'd really like to understand what we really gain by adding height at this point. And when we say opportunity zone, I guess maybe I'm still a little bit unclear about what we're actually gaining. If we can get more density in some of the other areas that we actually talked about in the other areas. So anyway.
Yes, I'll give just a 1 or 2 minute summary of the areas of opportunity and the policy issue. So the areas of opportunity as defined in the DIS are mixed-use centers, so the ones we talked about, downtown, Bellred, Wilburton, Factoria, as well as the neighborhood centers. So if you think of an area that has jobs, amenities, oftentimes transit there, those are the opportunity areas. And the policy issue is, should we be increasing our housing capacity at all around those centers? So on the outside of them. So this is not talking about inside the center. Should we have any additional capacity on the areas directly adjacent to the centers, and primarily within a quarter-mile walk. So that's the measure that we had. And we looked at all of the centers. You can see it on your, either on your screen or on the big screen. It's the mustard color areas, as well as some of the dark brown areas around the centers is the area that are contemplated for increased capacity. It's not too dissimilar from the HB 1110 middle housing. So we came up with this concept well in advance of the House bill going through the process and being adopted. So for what it's worth, it is very similar to the HB 1110, maybe a little bit more intensity than 1110. And then the multifamily directly adjacent to these areas of opportunity would have some increases to existing multifamily areas. So that's a topic that Loch Levin and other people who live in those areas are concerned about as well.
I definitely would like to have a bit more of a deep dive on this, just because it hasn't been clear to me in reading through the packet exactly what we're talking about. And having walked in some of the areas, they already have, you know, townhomes, triplexes, fourplexes, quite creative in terms of having more density already. So I'm trying to really understand, are we talking about more of that, or are we talking about even more density than that? And at that point, I can have a separate briefing with staff, but it seems to me that maybe my other colleagues might have some similar questions. Thank you.
I think the big difference is the ability to go higher in those areas is what's recommended.
Yeah, for some of the multifamily areas, it would be some additional height in those areas, up to four to six stories. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Barksdale. No, is that right? I'm sorry, I got confused on my list now. Let me see where I am. I'm sorry. It's Councilmember Lee's turn. I'm sorry. Councilmember Lee.
Well, I think that really depends on the neighborhood. That's the only thing I can say. It's got to be really specific, you know. And it depends also on other amenities, transportation. So at this moment, I think I would just leave it open for myself. So
Maybe study the impacts neighborhood by neighborhood area by neighborhood area. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
What Councilmember Lee just said.
Okay,
No, I agree. I think that's a good approach to it.
okay. Councilmember Robertson.
Well, I've sat through some of the planning commission meetings. I don't even know what this means. So it's talking about, instead of having transition zones, it would be like a new kind of transition zone where you would say you have a single family neighborhood and a mixed use center, and in a certain buffer around that, you would allow greater density, like as creating a new transition zone to a new density. Is that what you're talking about?
Similar to similar to the 1110 middle housing, so not like no new multifamily zones as we know them, but I think as Tara described, it's the gentle density in single-family areas, which happens to turn out to be very similar to 1110.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if done right and the height is limited, and I think it could be a nice thing because transitions are really important. But I do worry if we're already talking about significantly increasing the density and zoning and height of some of the centers, and then we have to create all this a new transition, because some of the centers, particularly the neighborhood centers, are meant to kind of have a transition on the property. There's transition overlays, and so the thing I wouldn't want to see happen is there be scope creep, because all of a sudden we allow this density here, and then you know how it is on the comp plan update. Oh, you know, we have a changed circumstance because next to us is now no longer R3.5, it's R10 or MF10. So now we should get to be MF10. I mean, so the scope creep, I think, is really important to scale down. I think in certain neighborhoods, it's not something we're going to want to do, particularly if it's going to create a lot of shading and view blockage. You know, we don't want to be killing people's gardens with giant buildings right next to their backyards. So I think if done right, it can be very, very good. So I guess I support studying it.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you. I support keeping it open for the study. Just a clarifying question, how is the radius determined around the areas of opportunity?
Yeah, we started out with just a quarter mile as the crow flies, so a buffer, and then did look at generally walk distances along existing networks. It's still some refinements to be done on that. Sometimes there's staircases or other things that might not be open for everyone, so some refinements still.
And Deputy Mayor?
I think my colleagues have said everything needs to be said on this. I think, it is a neighborhood by neighborhood situation. But I am concerned about, if this is truly just additional middle housing, we already have 1110 and 1337. So, yeah, I'm not sure why we would even explore this further. I'm not, I guess, opposed to doing the study, fine, but it seems like we're already overlapping and adding additional middle housing where I'm not sure it's necessarily needed, or it could really impact those neighborhoods, as Councilmember Robertson said, in terms of scope creep and unintended consequences. But again, I think this would have to be on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis.
And then I'll say that, I wonder how necessary it is to do that, given that we do now have the House Bill 1110 and 1337. That's a lot of change, and I know you say it's very similar to them. In my mind, it's not. I think that height, going up to 6 stories potentially, is a huge, unique impact in a neighborhood that has a lot of single-family duplexes, triplexes. They have apartment buildings. And the thing I love about it is they've retained all their trees. I'd love to study Loch Levin, for example, and understand how they were able to retain all the trees with all that different variety of housing types. So we feel like Loch Levin is a neighborhood that's done it right, and they've already embraced all that we want to see in 1110. I would feel fine with doing away with these areas of opportunity and just focusing on implementing 1110 and 1337. But I have to say, just to put this in context, whatever we decide finally on this does not tie our hands from ever doing anything else for the next 20 years, 40 years. I mean, you think about when we upzone downtown twice outside of the comp plan schedule. So, if we feel like we need to bring in these areas of opportunity in 5 years from now, we could certainly do that. And maybe that's something I would like to put in, is that we reassess the need for something like that in 5 years.
Mayor, can I make one additional comment?
Why don't we go around? So anybody down here? Yes, Councilmember Zahn.
I would say that in light of all of the things that we have that we're asking to look at, because I've been the one saying, hey, I don't understand, what about going to 5 stories or 6 in neighborhood centers? I would be fine with not actually including these areas of opportunity right now. To the mayor's point, we can always come back in X number of years and include other things, but it gives us a chance to actually breathe with the things we already have. So I would be okay with that, because I actually have spent some time walking around Loch Levin, and to the mayor's point, seeing how they've had actually, a fourplex and townhomes and lots of trees. And when you walk around it, it feels like a single family neighborhood. So I think we can learn a lot about that and spend some time in these other areas where we've already talked about doing more economic analysis and looking at that. So that's my thoughts.
Councilmember Robertson.
So I was listening to you speak, Mayor. I was going to say, I said I don't mind studying it. I am also 100% okay with removing it. And it seems like, listening to the council, that might be where we're leading. Can't can't even talk.
Leaning.
Leaning, it's getting late. Leaning, and so I just wanted to lend my voice to yours saying, I'm okay to get rid of them. And see, you know, that's what I was saying about the plan being so aggressive. I think we need to sit with some of this stuff for a while. So, thanks.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I agree with Councilman Robertson completely. That's the reason why I push for Wilburton. If we do Wilburton, we maximize it, we can leave this alone. Why get all the everybody's upset? You know, we don't know where to get from Wilburton. Let's go after it. And to me, Wilburton's an opportunity center.
Well, this is a citywide thing that we're talking about now.
The
Go
citywide
ahead, Deputy
opportunity.
Mayor.
Got it.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in as well that I'd be okay taking out the around mixed use and neighborhood centers, areas of opportunity. What is an area of opportunity that I would like to advocate for is per one of our, or a couple of our speakers this evening about the 40 acres at Overlake Farms and taking a look specifically there.
That's the next topic.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself then a little bit.
But guess what? You
But
get
I-
called
but-
on first.
Okay. So I've already been called on then for that, so okay,
Well,
that's
let
good.
me just make
Okay,
sure that
all
we're
right, fair
all
enough.
good. Are we all good with this? Councilmember Barksdale.
Question, I see the direction the council's going, but I was just curious, is there any additional cost to including it in the study versus taking it out?
Well, we are, just to clarify, I think the single-family areas are similar to 1110, so we're going to be studying that anyway. It is removing any increases to the multifamily areas that are getting the concerns in Loch Levin. So I think that's the direction. We are going to still be looking at the 1110 implementation as appropriate in the city.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you're good, Councilmember Stokes?
Yeah, we always come back on this when we see why we need.
Okay, so on to other residential areas, including middle housing. Deputy Mayor, would you like to start us off?
Certainly, I'll just repeat what I said. No, I really, and it goes to a real appreciation for all the great comments tonight, not just made this evening, but emailed in, et cetera. It was very, very helpful for all of us, and it raises some opportunities. So that's why I feel like it should be under areas of opportunity. But when there's an opportunity that is buffered and would have limited impact around the surrounding neighborhoods there, where we can put in additional housing, affordable housing, et cetera, I would really advocate strongly that we fully study the 40 acres, not just partial, but all of those 40 acres as part of that Overlake Farms to see what that environmental impact study would say around that. So just want to advocate for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Deputy Mayor. The neighborhood residential, we're going to be studying the House Bill 1110 and 1337 increases. And I'm wondering, Brattle Trails is going to get mad at me, but I'm wondering if the time for R1 and R1.8 zoning is over in Bellevue. It seems to me that all of our single-family residential, the minimum should be suburban, which is 3.5, unless it's heavily constrained by critical areas. Doesn't mean that people have to divide up their big horse lots and do it, but, or maybe we just limit it to the Overlake Farm. That is the largest undeveloped piece of property in the city, and they are asking for 3.5. To me, that makes a lot of sense, because we need all kinds of housing, but this is the best opportunity for a very large single-family home development in the city, which could have ADUs on it or whatever, as allowed by 1110. But I absolutely want to study making that. And the suburban is 3.5, right? I did some digging while we were. Okay, because I was trying to. What is LL?
Large lot.
And what is that? Is that one or 1.8?
It's one and 1.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then, and what's L then? 1 and 1.8? I couldn't figure it out. I finally found the table.
The RL is 7.5 up to 15.
Oh, so that's our 7.5, that's what's on the Overlake Farms piece right now? In the preferred alternative, the R low?
A small part of it, yeah.
Which part?
Let's see, I think we can come back with the
Is
map
it
that
the-
shows.
Yeah, because I think the 20 acres, 7.5 is fine.
Yeah.
That's higher than the 3.5, but,
Maybe you can come
think-
back with
We'll come back with,
information based on what the owners were asking for.
yeah, because I think that we
Corners.
should study that. If that's still at R1 or R1.8, that's too low. If it's at 3.5 or higher, I'm good with the preferred alternative. And then, are we gonna talk about the comp plan as a whole? Are we gonna have another crack at this, Mayor?
This is the comp plan as a whole.
Okay, so
all the
then let
different
me
parts.
just-
But
because-
we'll have another, at the end of
Great.
this, we'll have a chance to weigh in on anything that didn't get brought up.
Okay, because yeah, I wanted to comment on some things some
We
clarifications
are
on some
not
other
done yet.
components before we go. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, what we just discussed.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Yes, I agree. This property has been around for a long time. And it has been there, and it's located just south of the golf course and west of it. So most of it is really very well protected and undisturbed. And I think they have foregone a lot of opportunities in the past. And so this is the time. I think it's not going to be, sensitive to disturbing immediate neighborhood if we have this reasonable reason for them. So I think that's a good thing to do. I would support it.
So we're, just to clarify, and thank you, Councilmember Lee, we're talking about other residential areas, including middle housing. So, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. I also support looking at was it 40 acres within and the possibility of having that to be upzoned. My sense is that the city itself doesn't build housing, so we're about how we enable parcels to be able to be developed in a thoughtful way that then becomes a win-win for both the city and the property owners, so I support that. And I am just really glad that we're able to, as part of our comp plan, incorporate the 1110 and 1337. So, because that's how we look holistically at when we're talking about comp plan and housing. Because I was concerned about whether we were going to get done with what we're doing and then launch again into the 1110 and 1337. Because I feel like right now we have engaged community that's trying to understand what we're trying to do. So now is the time to leverage that engagement to really understand how 1110 and 1337 increases would happen in Bellevue. And what I don't completely understand yet is, so we have this designation map now, we've talked about these different elements. How do you contemplate the neighborhood residential of those two things coming back to us? It will be in the FEIS, it will be, I'm wondering if you pulled up the timeline where that actually comes back to us in terms of council touch points? Or is that further on in the presentation?
Yeah, we can go back to the timeline just very briefly. So in the FEIS, we'll be studying 1337 and 1110, and then it will, there'll be a good technical analysis in that document for everyone to look at. And then the Planning Commission will be developing the growth strategy that does incorporate those into it as appropriate. And then the policies and maps will come back to the city council and for the overall city plan that's next year. So early part to mid part of next year, it will be coming back to the council.
Okay, and the last time that you spoke to us about those two, the discussion was that the legal department was looking at how those two House bills would translate in Bellevue. And so is that something that's available for us to understand already, or is it going to be wrapped into this FEIS and we'll come back? And really, it's about helping us and the community understand the visibility of the steps in the process and what information will be available when.
And I, excuse me, the short answer to that, Councilmember, is that I think that's really more part of the EIS analysis. So we're going to wrap all of that into that. And what I would suggest is if the council is interested, we could come back to you in a study session and just give you that part of the report in terms of how 1110 and 1337 will be implemented through the comprehensive plan.
I would definitely want to see that, and I believe my colleagues would as well, but I won't speak for them.
Okay, where are we? Oh, me. I agree with my colleagues. I'd be very interested in looking at the horse farm and what we can do, what's possible there. Okay, now we're on to affordable housing. Deputy Mayor? We're not there yet. We're gonna go through. That's okay. So now we're still on the comp plan and the little components of it. I know it's a lot to think about. So now we're on to affordable housing. So we have a planning commission recommendation that we've all looked at, and so I'm looking for comments on how you feel about the recommendation, what you would like to add to it, or what you'd like to see more studied more. So Deputy Mayor, why don't we start with you?
I'm okay with the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Barksdale.
Comfortable with the recommendation.
Okay, Councilmember Robertson.
I'm okay with the recommendation, but I have a question. When you look at, you're looking at both incentives and mandatory inclusionary, are you looking at a whole range of incentives? There's land use incentives, there's fee in lieu, there's deed in lieu. You're looking at the full gamut? Yes?
We will list those out in the FEIS. It won't get to the like code level detail. That
Right.
would be a future
Just in
step,
general.
really, but at the general policy level, the pros and cons of different approaches.
Will that look at the impacts on affordability for units that are not in that classification? Meaning, if we have mandatory inclusionary, will it look at how that increases the costs of units that are not part of the affordable housing in the same project?
In the same building. Yeah, that's something we can add to the scope.
I
as
think
sort
we
it out.
need to look at that because the council wants to, by the time we get to the end of this, we're going to want to know on these choices, how they impact the developability, whether it's going to pencil and whether it makes, what thing is, I guess it'd be good to look at the different tools. What's going to be most effective at getting affordable housing without also driving up the cost of housing that's not in that category? I mean, what's the most effective? So if we're not looking at that, we really should be. But I support the recommendation. I just want to make sure we're looking at the right things. Thanks.
Okay. Look at me. Now I'm confused as to even where we're on affordable housing. You were number 2, so now we're at, you were 3. So now we're at Councilmember Stokes.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Councilmember Lee.
What are we looking at, the overall comp plan?
No, affordable housing within the overall comprehensive plan.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. Yes.
Oh, you're good with it. Okay, sorry. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. My one question is, when we look at the affordability, is it both rentals and homeownership, or just rentals? Or can you just clarify when we talk about affordability?
We will be looking at both of those.
At both of those. That's great, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, well, I have a little bit to say here. So, somebody laugh. So I'm interested in looking at an additional analysis of the mandatory inclusionary housing and incentives. That's kind of, I think, what the Planning Commission recommended. And I'm also interested in, we're doing a lot of upzone with the comprehensive plan. So how can we lever that to create affordable housing with the upzones? So even in residential, even in everything that we're looking at, anything that we give more opportunity to, I'd like to see how we might incentivize affordable housing with that. And then I'm also very interested in looking at should we be creating a new multifamily property tax exemption for high-rise residential? I know you alluded to the fact that it's currently difficult to afford to put affordable housing in high-rise, but perhaps we could look at the MFTE in a different way for high-rise and come up with a formula that works for incentivizing it in that as well. So those are my thoughts on affordable housing. So for tree codes, I'm going to start with me. I think with the tree, do we have it? I know, that's why it's so confusing. We're going to talk about tree codes and for the entire comprehensive plan, all city. And I think, a lot of times our land use dictates our tree codes. And I would really like to see tree codes dictating land use. So if we have a commitment to 40 to 50% tree canopy, and we look at Wilburton and the study area that we've been talking about today has very, very, very few trees, I sure would rather start with a goal of a tree code and then start planning, okay, how much infill can we do, rather than we're going to put all this housing in and now we only have room for 10 trees. So that's just my opinion, but I would like to lead with trees a little more as we do the comp plan. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, I would really like to understand how this fits with the tree code effort that we're doing separately already, because it's not as clear to me that, well, let me take a step back. Absolutely, we need to have a tree canopy analysis as part of this work. I guess I am just trying to, in my mind, understand how these different process and policy work that we're doing dovetails together, because we had an update about the fact that we were launching into community engagement and working on the tree canopy. And so are we talking about lifting up that work into here? Or help me understand how those processes we're working on are the same or different?
Yeah, the current land use code amendment that is being worked on right now is continuing on. We're studying at a programmatic level the citywide impacts of increased capacity from a number of fronts. So ours is a related but separate effort that we're doing right now, and it will look at HB 1110, 1337, other impacts to the tree canopy that we have, and it might come up with new policies or goals that we have that would guide future efforts.
Okay, which then is working in conjunction with this other effort that we're already doing, right? Because I agree with, the comments already made about the fact that not every lot is the same, not every neighborhood is the same. We know that our tree canopy, dashboard and report shows that some areas have a lot more trees that could be retained than other areas that is already more of a tree desert than we already have. And I guess I would also like to make sure when we do a tree canopy analysis that do we actually also account for the fact that there are a lot of street trees that could be put in and a lot of other things. So it's a holistic view about trees and how this fits in with our comp plan itself. So I guess maybe my thoughts are not fully coherent and together, but those are some things I've been thinking about when it comes to looking at tree canopy. I do also agree with the comments that we had last time we had a tree canopy discussion, which is not all trees are the same. Certain types of trees, even if they're not as large of a diameter, might be a lot more meaningful to us than other trees. And so how we account for all of that is important to me. Thank you.
I will add that when we finalize the FEIS or when that's produced, it'll have a number of mitigation strategies, and so that will really provide, I think, context for other changes that need to occur to meet the tree canopy goals.
Tell me if I'm wrong, that still sounds to me like we're putting building ahead of trees. like, if we put 7 buildings in, then we should put 3 trees in, as opposed to our goal is to have 7 trees. So how many buildings can we put in?
My understanding is the mitigation strategies will probably be more broad-based. So it'll be things like we'd have to amend the tree code in such a way to add a higher percentage of tree preservation, have different opportunities for things like tree banking, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's part of the whole piece. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
I think we've talked about it enough. I think it sounds like a good idea. I hope we're not tacking on a whole lot more.
Okay.
I totally agree with the concept, but I just,
Okay. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I have some problem with tagging on things that are all important, but when they are combined, sometimes when we are talking about one, without really thoroughly have a conversation or understanding or discussion on the other one, I think it gets very difficult, challenging to figure out which drives what. I think they're all connected, but in order to, I suggested I don't know which drives what. I think that needs to be discussed. That's all I'm saying.
So you want to see more analysis of that, which is fair.
Separately, yes, separately.
Yeah.
Because when the staff was trying to answer you the question, just, well, which drive what, has to be, I think, separately, so that we as council can really look at it, and we have to choose, prioritize.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you. I support the tree canopy analysis, but I don't, kind of building on what Councilmember Lee said in terms of what drives what, I guess I'm just interested in what's gonna help us get to our goals, independent of what drives what. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. Well, when I look at the comp plan, looking at it as a whole and looking at the trees, I'll get to that. I want us to look at what is going to create a city that not just we want to live in, but that our kids and grandkids are going to want to live in. How is it going to be livable? And, how's the scale going to be right? How are the transitions and the walkability going to be right? How are people going to get around? If they have a 15-minute city, but they're stuck in a block intersection for 15 minutes, that doesn't get them to the 15-minute city. So it's all connected, as Councilmember Lee said. Coming to trees, I really like the mayor's thought of how do we, look at trees, because those are part of livability. And as the staff and my colleagues know, I'm always thinking 7 steps down the road. So let me just throw an idea on you based on what the mayor said, and let me know if this is something that would be informed by the study. So if at the end of the comp plan, when they do the zoning and the tree code and the actual land use code that follows the comp plan, if council wanted to set a tree standard of number of trees and canopy square feet per acre, like you do with units, like say they want to have 10 trees and 200 square feet of canopy per acre, just take that as a round number. Is that something that would be informed on figuring out that right amount by this FEIS? And I know we're getting a little out of the box, it is a little late, but our brains are churning. So would that be something that would be informed by the FEIS?
Yeah, why don't we mark that down as something we'll report back on at the next meeting? Because, we do have a scope that's written up on what we're going to do, and then that's an
Okay.
idea that we can see how it syncs up with that and
Because
report
it
back
seems to me if we're wanting to create density for buildings and we're on it, wanting to make sure there's trees, having a tree count plus canopy, because you can have, not all trees are equal, right? And some places a shorter tree is fine, but it can still present a lot of canopy. I think would be a kind of a standard that we might want to go to, and have the different zones have different tree canopy count and density numbers. Just a thought, but if that's something that could be informed by this, I think it would be great, and I support moving forward on it. Thanks.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I'll second Councilmember's Robertson's comments there. I think that's a great idea, if it can inform us of that, and appreciate the mayor's comments as well about, thinking about trees first. I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now we're on to,
Can I, sorry, one point I didn't, it kind of escaped me, just one quick one. You mentioned about inclusionary,
that was,
mandatory.
during affordable
Yeah,
housing. Mhm.
mandatory inclusion. I think I didn't hear any, you asked that we approve that, I went.
I didn't ask to approve it.
Oh.
I asked that they study it
To study, okay.
because,
Can I make a point? Yeah.
yeah,
I for one would not support that, but of course it should be studied. But just on record, I will not support.
we're just talking about studying.
I know.
And I want to say again,
It's okay to
I
study.
want to emphasize what I said. When we ask to study something, it does not necessarily mean we want that. We're looking at the impacts of things, so this is a very open conversation. So now we're on to the favorite topic of other. What have we left off? And I'm just gonna say, when we talk about neighborhoods and we talk about increased density and creating opportunities for people to live in a neighborhood environment that's walkable and close to amenities, and I think, I mean, I've been through many, many neighborhoods in Bellevue, and they're all incredible. But in terms of implementing 1110 in the middle housing, I really think Loch Levin has done a uniquely, remarkably good job of maintaining their tree canopy, incorporating a variety of housing, and retaining a character where regardless of whether you're in multifamily, single-family, duplex, triplex, you feel an integral part of the neighborhood. And I think that's the ultimate goal. And so I would love to kind of study what they've done right. And I do honestly think it's a lot to do with retaining trees. And I'm curious as to how they were able to do that with all the development that's happened there. So that's my other. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, I would say for me, my thought would be that as we work on the 1110 and 1337 of further engagement, just like you did so thank you very much on the neighborhood center building types, adding this slide that kind of shows when we say 2 to 4, what does it look like? To the degree we can do that also as we talk about 1110 and 1337. So I guess really I'm doubling down on the mayor's comment about, that particular neighborhood, but we know that there are other neighborhoods as well that has already had this kind of gentle density that would fit in with the 1110 and 1337. So to the degree we could do more building types, maybe we could do some walking tours or neighborhood tours to really show what we're talking about that threads the needle between all of these elements we're talking about, including trees and transportation that works. I think that would go a long ways towards allaying folks not trying to imagine what we're talking about. So I would just encourage us to do some of that work. I mean, you've already done a tremendous amount of effort, but I think that one probably needs just a little bit more of that go and see philosophy. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
I was trying to think of something else that we would like to work on and add that to the list, but no, I think these are good ideas. And on the trees, one of the things I would like to see a little more, if we're going to go into that, which takes it out of what we've been doing with the group working on trees in a sense, get them involved as well. And it sounds like this is a way to deal with all the concerns we have and everything going on. I'm just kind of interesting how we're kind of adding stuff into this as we go on to the DIS. But with the trees, I would like to see if we go into that. I think we need to revise and upgrade our category and how we go about looking at the tree canopy, because I've been driving around lately and looking, there are more trees here than ever in neighborhoods, but there are areas that are going down. So and the 40% is based on the whole city. We have probably 80% in a lot of places, but it keeps us from focusing on areas where the trees are coming down. And we need to focus on that instead of trying to build. We just kind of get refocused. So if you can help us refocus on that, I think that'll help a lot, because I think the mayor is right. We need to look at that and have a better way to deal with it, because right now it's not really satisfactory. But the reality is, this is a great place for trees. We have forest out there. How do we do that and let other areas go? I think it's something to look at. So I think we've been going about a wrong way. Well, we're almost at 40%, so what's the rush? So I think this will get us to focus where we really need to focus on it.
Okay, so thank you. Councilmember Lee, anything other, this is like an other, like something we haven't already brought up?
Yes.
Okay.
I would recommend going to Davis, California, to look at how,
I've been there.
yeah, how a sustainable, environmentally friendly community is built. They've been around for the last 50 years at least. I'm sure they're up there somewhere. Talk about Loch Levin. That's what it reminded me of when I saw their housing units. So take a trip down there, take a look. Just jokingly, the people who have more than 50% tree coverage should actually have a tax deduction. I'm sure my house is more than 50% green than my house.
Is
So
this
anyway,
self-serving?
this is just sideline.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you. I think the mention about having a visual representation would be helpful. Like being able to see the different mid-rise, high-rise buildings was a good example. Was helpful. So being able to see what this tangibly looks like, building on Councilmember Zahn's point. I think when this comes back for us to think further about it, if there's a way for us to see these things that I'm about to list relative to each other, it would be helpful. Values, the three values, and how each alternative or the findings relate to that, the components, and the relative to the impact findings, the EIS findings. Because I feel like being able to look at these things together will help with deciding or determining or the discussion around where we want to go. So values, components, the alternatives, and the impacts findings.
Okay, Councilmember Robertson.
Okay, a couple of last thoughts. I have a couple questions about the transportation impacts. I know you're studying them. Are you looking at vehicle counts based on the alternatives that will be created by the alternatives?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
So we talked a little bit about the additional analysis that we're going to be doing for the FEIS and preferred alternative. As we said before, we haven't taken into account some of the capacity increases under the new legislation, so that will be a piece that gets fed into the transportation model. In addition, the preferred alternative overall capacity, those will all be fed into the transportation model, as well as options for the Northeast 6th Street extension. So those are all various components. The overall FEIS will include mitigation strategies. I think the draft EIS went through in a fair amount of detail. Each alternative definitely resulted in transportation impacts.
Okay. Will it include vehicle counts? Projected vehicle counts?
I believe Emil, correct me if I'm wrong,
You're talking about trip counts?
Trip counts, yeah.
it will go to the level of detail where we're assessing, intersection failures and things like that, but it will not include project level mitigation, so.
Okay, so I guess maybe next to, I want to know if it looks at vehicle counts, looks at intersection delay, it compares it with the alternatives, and then looks at mitigation plans and or mitigation assumptions. And maybe you can bring that question back next week. I think it needs to look at those. So that's one. So number two, will the FEIS, I know it's looking at 1110 and 1337, will it include the ordinance that we're about to pass tonight, which is 6746, which is the ADU changes? Will that added capacity be included in the FEIS?
Yeah, we will be looking at that because it's really a subset of the
Perfect.
1337.
Great.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, a comment, this is just a comment. The council for years has really focused our growth in the growth corridors. Now, because of the state legislation, we're required to spread density like peanut butter across the city. And usually cities pick one lane, growth corridors or spread like peanut butter, and this kind of does both. And so I'm really glad it's looking at that, because I suspect, I mean, I already think that alternative 3 without 1110 and 1337 is too aggressive. And when you add that in, I think that we're gonna find that we're gonna need to scale things back because the impacts are going to be severe. And so, and it'll take away the good from the growth and the development and density if it's just too much. I think focusing on those graceful transitions, walkable human scale, and making sure that impacts are mitigated is gonna be the lane to victory for this city in keeping us a livable city. So I hope that with the EIS, with the comp plan update, we are up to the task of continuing to make Bellevue livable, walkable, good tree canopy, and a graceful and wonderful place to live. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I'd also like to see a tree canopy map as part of this, as a reminder to all of us where those areas are in terms. Councilmember Zahn mentioned the tree deserts we might have in our city, so I think that'll be helpful. Will be coming back to us in September. Is that right? Did I read that correctly on there?
That is the current schedule. Based on all of the analysis, we're kind of making sure we can deliver on that exact month.
Okay.
But the technical document will be available for everyone to review in the coming months, and we'll get a firmer deadline on when we're actually going to be producing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess depending on where there's no more public comment at this point or additional can you please?
Use my mic. Because
I think he can hear me.
No, it's not, it's the TV people.
Any additional public comment or outreach at this point, or has that been completely exhausted at this point?
We are, for our overall effort, we're doing continuous community engagement.
Okay.
On literally a daily basis, we are meeting with a range of different stakeholder groups and getting input. On the EIS, there is no comment period on and final environmental impact statement.
Okay.
So there is no additional community meeting specific to it, but it is a document everybody will have access to as a technical document. And we respond to all of the 1,600 comments Tara referred to. We have a write-up in response to all of those in the final environmental impact statement.
Okay, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we will take we'll resume at 25 till, quick break. And then we're going to have another study session item. But after that, we have three ordinances that we should be able to get through quite quickly. So let's see how we do. Let's take a quick break. Okay, we're going to continue with our second study session item, Mr. Miyake.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The next item is recommendation for the curb management plan. This, by way of background, this was last in front of the council back in November 14th of 2022 as part of the Planning Commission's comprehensive plan amendment process. So with that, I know the Transportation Commission has taken a look at this. Joining us this evening is Karen Stash, our Chair of our Transportation Commission. Thank you very much, Chair Stash, for sticking with us this evening, as well as Chris Long, our Assistant Director of Mobility Operations. That I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. We're going to breeze through this as quickly as we can and cover the main topics, but just a reminder that tonight we're looking for direction for staff to return with a resolution to approve this plan at a coming meeting. So 3 main topics we're going to hit that we'll go through quickly, just a little bit of an overview of how the plan was prepared. I'll touch on a couple of the components, and then we'll wrap it up with next steps. So I'll pass it on to Chair Stash.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here. All right, so let's start with a very brief overview of what is a curb management plan. What we did with staff and with the commission is to create a vision for managing the curbsides, and I'll give you a little explanation of what the curb includes in a moment, with a focus on the urban core, and I do have a map of that as well. So we spent 1.5 years putting together these comprehensive recommendations with about 7 Transportation Commission meetings and lots of public input. This map shows the areas that we are referring to, and they are the 4 highest density areas and the growth areas within Bellevue. So I'll be speaking specifically to those tonight. The curb. We spent some time talking about what actually is the curb besides that 5-6 inch thing that we never want to hit on a bicycle or a scooter. Really, it looks at 3 different areas. If you look at the picture to the right, there's the sidewalk zone, there's the landscape zone in between the sidewalk and then the road, and then the curbside lane. So it's referring to all 3 of those in the discussion tonight. So why is this needed? Well, as the city grows, more challenges, as more people, more needs come. One thing, operations, up until now, and as the city, when the city's smaller ad hoc processes work, as we get bigger, not so much. So need to change from ad hoc to a bit more structured, and just a lot more competing curb space, again, as growth happens. Permitting and pricing has been somewhat inconsistent, just because it's what worked in the past, but not so much going forward. And same with enforcement. No city has unlimited resources, and so we have to think about how best to enforce the policies coming forward. And then roles and responsibilities. Right now, different people, different divisions, groups kind of control that space. So defining it and then setting policies around that is what this plan is all about. We first sat back, and staff did a great job really thinking about the principles behind this as we were thinking out the policies. First, equity, has to be core to that. It's got to be an efficient policy in order for it to work. It's got to be effective for it to work. It's got to be user-friendly, so as businesses understand the plan, how it works, how as residents understand, they've got to understand, or else it's just not going to work for them. There's got to be decision-making clarity. In other words, somebody needs to be able to sit back and say, oh, I understand how we got here. This makes sense, so that has to be built in. And then adaptable and resilience. And I know we had a couple speakers tonight specifically mention that everything that we do, including this, has to be adaptable and resilient. So some of the highlights, like as I mentioned before, 1.5 years of work on this with an adoption by you guys in December. And from that, 13 new policies came. 8 that were brand new and 5 that were modified. The ones that specifically, some of the topics that bubbled up from a policy standpoint is curb technology solutions, which the business community was very supportive of. In the surveys, the residential community a little bit less, but Chris will go through some of those with you. Another policy topic was the mobility hubs. And these are areas where different transportation types come together. So think of someone riding a bike to a bus or a bike to a train station or whatever. So how do those different transportation units come together? And then as the city's grown, there's been a more desire for curb space to be used for things like food trucks and on-street dining and things like that. So those were some of the topics that bubbled up and really fell into these policies.
Thank you, Chair Stash. So the next few slides are just really to highlight the robust engagement we went through. We started the process doing interviews and focus groups across a very broad cross-section of the users of the curb. We did a curb summit where we brought together both the public and the private sector and practitioners to learn more about how to best manage the curb space and to develop our policies. We used Engaging Bellevue, had a lot of great feedback, did a lot of outreach through our social media, and then ultimately through many meetings, we got to a draft plan that was published for 4 weeks for public comment. And as you heard tonight, a lot of great comments from our stakeholders on how we incorporated their feedback. One of the big ones you heard about was making sure we include traffic studies as part of the plan, and that anytime we are going to touch a curb that's been identified for movement or is currently a traffic usage curb. And then we also heard from neighboring neighborhoods that are adjacent to the urban core that wanted to make sure we think about how they may be impacted by changes we make in the urban core, and so that was also accounted for. So the components of the curb management plan, it is really well laid out in the plan. The team that put it together did an outstanding job. I'm not going to talk about each one of these because it's, you can easily find them in the plan, but it really leads to a program that is very implementable for us. We have 28 practices across these 6 focus areas that are really the next steps for us to work through as we develop curb management. The highlights, the main ones that we are going to focus on, these are the top priority ones that were determined through our work with the commission. We do need to find a solution to enforcement. We are falling way behind, especially as the urban core grows. We will be looking at the potential of paid on-street parking for both the 2-hour zones and potentially load zones as well. But again, it's just it's laid out as an option that we will study further. And then accessibility, making sure our passenger and commercial load zones are well distributed through the downtown, and then take advantage of the success we've had with placemaking, especially in Old Bellevue, and build a better program that is expandable and also easier to apply. And with that, I want to just wrap up with a thank you to our outstanding commission and our commission liaison, Councilmember Zahn, and also to the project manager who led us through this whole project, Chris Iverson, who unfortunately is no longer with the city, but got us to the very end on this project and has left a great legacy in this plan. So with that, we're open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Chair Stash. Thank you for all the work that you and the commission have done, and thank you for being here tonight. I think that we'll start with a motion, and on the hope that we maybe could put this on consent. Next, let's start with that motion, and
Sounds
we
good.
can
I move
modify.
direct staff to return with a resolution for action at a future council meeting on consent to adopt the curb management plan as recommended by the Transportation Commission.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Councilmember Zahn, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, well, I just want to express my deep gratitude to the Transportation Commission and the staff and all of the comments to get us to this point. You know, I think it was a real testament that the feedback we got along the way were concerns raised and perspectives to be considered. And in every point, staff spent the time along with the Transportation Commission to make adjustments so that what we actually have is something that is a really great best practice guide that is available not just for the city of Bellevue, for other cities as well, that we can lift up as other things cities can also look at. The only other comment I would make is that, or two things. One is the pilot roadmap. I like the fact that there are these pilot and ideas that we can look at implementing. And then two, I believe that there The only thing that we did here is maybe the adjacency of neighborhoods and some concerns there. So I think it's important for us to talk about the fact that, or highlight the fact that any of those ideas that are in there, including curb pricing, those are options to study and not something that we have already made a decision we're gonna do. Because any one of these, when we look at them, the cost benefit and the value may not be there. And so we might make some choice that those are not things we're gonna do right now or even in the future. So I think those are important things to lift up so everyone's aware when we vote for this, what are we actually voting for? So anyway, I'm excited to say yes to this and also to bring it back on consent. Thanks.
Councilmember Lee.
Thanks again for doing a good job. I think that's a great project, and I agree with it. I believe that, something that I heard from campus representative, it's important that if you find traffic impact, pay attention to it. And also if, there's mobility consideration, I think that's important as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
No comments, support it, thank you.
Councilmember Robertson.
Ditto.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for the outstanding outreach to all the stakeholders, residents, et cetera. I think that's why, there were not any real objections to it at this point. Maybe a couple of clarifications, but I think everyone feels really good about this plan moving forward. So thank you, staff, commission, et cetera, for the outstanding work here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to vote for this, and I think it's going to really change the way we work in Bellevue and the parking, which all of us have had issues with. So it's great. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Do you think that we could add in the paid parking study, looking at the residential parking permits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So can we have a head nod if everybody's okay with that? All right, so
Yep.
good. All right, no other comments. We've made a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent.
Yeah, we voted on it first. It doesn't matter.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's okay. Let's just move on.
Oh, my goodness. I'm losing it. Okay. So,
We reaffirmed it, yeah.
so now, hold on. So now we have 3 ordinances.
We are on other ordinances, resolutions.
Yeah.
Mayor and councils. So the first one is ordinance 6746, which amends the land use code by removing barriers to encourage production of and attached accessory dwelling units and creates a mechanism for separate ownership of ADUs. This matter was last in front of council on June 12th, where the Planning Commission presented their recommended ordinance, and after discussion, council directed staff to prepare the ordinance for final adoption for this evening. We have staff here to answer any questions you might have before you take action up on this.
Let's start with a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance 6746, amending sections 20.20.120, 20.20.590, and 20.50.016 of the City of Bellevue Land Use Code.
Second.
Removing barriers to and encouraging production of attached accessory dwelling units, creating a mechanism for separate ownership of ADUs, and allowing for existing ADU applicants to utilize new code provisions under this ordinance.
So I'm just going to say that we've had a full presentation and discussion, and we asked you to bring this forward to vote on. It's also truing up our codes with House Bill 1337, which is legally what we have to do. So any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great.
Okay, ordinance 6747.
Okay, this one, I'm going to recuse myself, and I will be back after. All right.
All right, well, we'll start in the same way. Would someone like to make the motion, please?
Yeah, I move to adopt ordinance 6748, establishing a transportation benefit district.
Oh, no, 6747.
Oh.
It's on the development services
I'm
fee.
ready to be done. Okay, I move to adopt ordinance 6747, amending the 2023 Development Services Fee Ordinance number 6692 to establish the Affordable Housing Permit Review and Inspection Fee Reduction Program.
Okay, motion has been made, seconded. Do I have any comments or questions before we go to full vote? Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that passes. And I think we can bring back in the mayor.
I was wondering why she was.
Here she comes.
Good job. Move right ahead. Okay.
Okay, ready for the last one?
Yes.
Ordinance 6748 establishes a citywide transportation benefit district and the formation of the district itself. This was last in front of council on July 10th. Following a public hearing, at that time, council directed staff to bring this ordinance back for final adoption. Tonight, we are seeking council adoption of this ordinance. We have staff here to answer any questions council may have before you take action on it.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is something we've had a presentation on and discussion about. We've asked you to come bring it forward to us for a vote. Let's start with a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance 6748, establishing a transportation benefit district, specifying the boundaries of the transportation benefit district, specifying the transportation improvements to be funded by the transportation benefit district, and creating a new chapter 4.22 of the Bellevue City Code entitled Transportation Benefit District.
So I'm just going to underscore that this is not saying we're going to use this tool. It's not saying how much money we would raise. It's not saying how we would raise it. It's not saying what we would spend it on. It's just saying that this is a tool we want to have available to us, and if we decide that we want to activate it, then we will begin discussions on all those things that I just mentioned.
Yep, that's correct. And why don't we focus in? We've got a series of slides. We can flip through them, but I think the important thing is to talk about the outreach, which came up a lot at the last meeting, and what we're planning on doing.
You know what? I think we'll skip that, but thank you anyway. And so, are there any comments or questions from anybody? Okay, go ahead.
I noted on the page 3 of your ordinance, 4.22-030, authority of the district. You mentioned that in item B, the board may by majority votes impose vehicle license fee 1, and then 2 and 3, and so on. And then also C, when approved by voters, you can also assess taxes, fees. And then D, the district may also issue general obligation bonds. I appreciate all those things that are very clearly articulated. The only question I have is, I had a chance to talk to the staff. You specifically under item B about impose a vehicle license fee, impose a fee or change a building or charge on building construction or land development as authorized by RCW and so on. And finally, impose a 0.1% sales tax, also as authorized by RCW. So I was curious, what does the RCW specifically say? Are they specifically spelling out those 4 and plus C and D, 6 ways of revenue generation, or is there something in addition? I don't want to make sure that we are assuming that these are the taxes that we will levy, even though the board has a decision at the time.
I appreciate that
Yeah,
question.
so that's the question. Yeah, and
I
then
think
after
that-
you answer that, I have some recommendation to make.
I
Go
think
ahead,
that
please.
he's asking for kind of the legalese when you say you may do this versus you will do this. And so if you can explain that, or if Kathy Gurla could explain that, but also just again underscoring that we are not making any decision on what tool if and we would use, if we were to use it, on how we would raise the money.
Councilmember, the language that's within our ordinance mirrors that of state law. It does not add or exclude any of the options, and so it was structured to follow state law.
I asked for a copy of that RCW. Is RCW pretty specific just on those 4 Three things, three kind of taxes?
The only thing that is not included, there is a tolling authority, is the only other piece, but the RCW is very specific to those.
So would you want to add tolling authority in it as well?
I don't think
Why?
I don't think that would work in a city environment. I can't picture ourselves setting up tolls on some of our arterials.
We don't have control over the highway, so.
Okay, for good reason. All right. What I was hoping to do is, I just want to make a friendly amendment to the motion. If you approve, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. As you know, I have voted against it when the issue was raised last week. Not because I don't support the Transportation Benefit District. I do. We need money to do the things we need to do. I'm just concerned that we are prescribing how we want to tax it. And the one concern I have is sales tax.
What's your amendment?
Yeah, so my amendment would be, the board may by a majority vote impose taxes as authorized by RCW 30 so. And that's it, without specifically saying
That's your,
one tax or the other tax or the other tax, and leaving out tolling tax. And if you want to include general obligation bond or revenue bond, that could also be included as
Okay,
part
we're
of
going to get Kathy
RCW.
Gurla's
It's already
feedback on
included.
changing the
So I'm
legal
happy.
language.
Yeah, then we have official RCW that provides
Okay.
us which are the taxes we
Fine,
would do.
Conrad.
Thank you.
So the RCW is very specific as to the authority of the district. And it specifically says that a district's authorized to impose the following, I'm quoting, taxes, fees, charges, and tolls: a sale and use tax, a vehicle fee, a fee or charge in accordance with this other statute. So if you limit it only to taxes, it's specific types of taxes, and you would be leaving out other kinds of powers that the district could use in the future, a vehicle fee, or other fees or charges. If I understand what Councilmember Lee's amendment is to limit it to taxes.
Right.
And
So
it's not
let's see if
every
he gets
tax.
a second on his motion. Does anybody want to second it? Going once, going twice?
Can I just ask a question?
No, you'd have to second it before you can ask it.
Then second.
Okay, go.
How would that would limit us, or the district, correct? We couldn't consider any other form of revenue then, it would only be taxes. That would kind of box us in then.
Correct, and it is only sales and use tax are the only types of taxes
Okay,
listed here.
thank you.
Okay.
Can I clarify? One,
No, you have a motion on the
I
floor.
know, but he's asking. Well,
No,
she
you got
answered.
to answer it. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those.
No. My question is.
Listen, Conrad,
No.
I'm running the meeting, not you.
I understand. Well, please.
All those in favor of
Can I
Conrad's
ask a
motion, vote
question
aye.
with a response for
Any
the order,
opposed?
for the Roberts rule?
Nay, nay, nay. All right,
Why is
thank
that?
you.
Well, that's okay. My
All right,
question is,
anyway, so now we're down to the motion in front of us.
I have not
Which is
voted.
already,
I have not voted. I didn't say yes or no.
on your own motion.
Okay,
I'll let
thank you.
abstain.
Well, it doesn't
So
matter.
There's a
Because
motion
on my
on
own
the
motion,
table.
we voted on the amendment.
We
We have not
did.
voted on the main motion yet,
That's right, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
okay?
So there's a motion on the table. Any other comments or questions on the main motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. One against, and with that, thank you very much. Our meeting is done.